Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Whisper Zone. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious. Where are you watching from, and what time is it in your part of the world? Now, find your cozy spot and relax. Story 1. I've seen a lot of strange things in my 20 years as a park ranger, but nothing like what happened that June. Nothing that still gives me nightmares, makes my old war wounds ache, and forces me to sleep with the lights on. And it all started with a single frozen deer on the hottest day of summer. My name is Bob Hawthorne, and I'm the senior ranger at Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest. Most folks just call me Hawk. That morning started like any other. I was making my hay. Usual rounds, checking on the hiking trails and animal tracks. The sun was beating down hard, and I had already taken off my ranger jacket, the temperature hitting close to 70 degrees. I reached for my lucky compass, the same one that saved my life back in the Pacific during the war. It's become a habit whenever something feels off, and boy, did something feel off that morning. The animals were acting weird, all wrong. I'd been tracking the deer herds for weeks, and they were moving in ways I'd never seen before. Instead of heading up the mountain like they usually do in summer, they were running down, running away from something. That's when I saw it, a patch of white in the distance. At first I thought it was leftover snow, which would have been strange. Enough in June. But as I got closer, my boots crunching on unexpectedly crisp grass, I realized what I was looking at. It was a full-grown buck, frozen solid. Not just dead, frozen. Ice crystals covered its brown fur, and its eyes were wide open, like it had seen something terrifying in its final moments. I reached out to touch it, and the cold burned my fingers, even in the warm air. "This isn't possible," I muttered to myself, pulling out my radio to call it in. But before I could, something else caught my eye. About 50 feet ahead, standing dark against the trees, was an old Native American totem pole I knew well. I'd passed it hundreds of times on my patrols, except now, it was covered in a layer of frost so thick it looked like it was made of ice. The carved faces seemed to be warning me, their frozen expressions twisted in fear. I took a step closer to examine the totem, and that's when it happened. The quiet of the forest was broken by soft thuds all around me. Thud, thud, thud. I looked down, and my blood ran cold. Birds. Dead birds were falling from the sky, hitting the ground like rocks. Each one was frozen solid, their wings spread mid-flight as if the sky itself had turned to ice. The temperature was dropping fast. I could see my breath now, coming out in thick white clouds. My compass started spinning wildly, something it hadn't done since that night in the Pacific when our ship nearly went down. That's when I heard it. A sound I'll never forget, like ice cracking, but deeper, almost like laughter. It echoed through the trees, making the frozen birds at my feet shiver. I've been through war. I've got a nasty scar on my left cheek and a silver star that proves I can handle myself in a fight. But standing there, watching summer turn to winter in minutes, watching birds fall frozen from a warm sky, that's when I knew I was dealing with something no amount of military training could have prepared me for. And it was only the beginning. Grabbed my radio again, this time my hands shaking not from the cold but from what I was about to report. "Base, this is Hawthorne. We've got a situation up here on the North Trail, and you're not going to believe what I'm seeing." The radio crackled with static, and through the white noise I could have sworn I heard that ice-cracking laughter again. Closer this time. Much closer. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those frozen birds falling from the sky. The morning brought more bad news. 3 hikers hadn't checked in at their campsite. Jane and Mike Roberts, a young couple, from Seattle, and their friend Tom Chen. They were supposed to return yesterday afternoon. "They're probably just running late," Sarah at the ranger station tried to reassure me, but the worry in her voice matched the knot in my stomach. I packed extra supplies in my backpack, more flares than usual, 2 flashlights, extra batteries, and my old military first aid kit. Something told me I'd need them, Before heading out, I touched my lucky compass again. The needle was pointing straight north, steady now, but I didn't trust the calm. The forest felt different today, quieter. The usual morning bird songs were missing, and the air felt heavy, like right before a storm. I followed the hikers' planned. Judy was checking my map against the landmarks. Everything looked normal until I reached their campsite. What I found there still doesn't make sense. Their tent was set up perfectly. Nothing knocked over, no signs of bears or other animals. Their backpacks were lined up neatly outside. But something was very wrong. There was a pot of coffee on their portable stove, cups set out for breakfast. The coffee was still warm, steam rising from the liquid, but the steam froze in mid-air, creating tiny ice crystals that hung there like frozen spider webs. Their breakfast plates had frost on them. Their eggs and bacon turned to ice. It looked like they had just been sitting there about to eat when something happened, something that made them leave everything behind. I grabbed my radio. Base, this is Hawthorne. I found the missing hikers' campsite. No sign of them, but stopped. How could I explain what I was seeing? You better send backup. That's when I noticed the cave entrance nearby. I'd never seen it before, which was strange because I knew these trails like the back of my hand. The rocks around the entrance were covered in red paintings, old Native American art. They showed a tall, skeletal figure with a deer's skull for a head. In each painting, the figure was surrounded by small, human-like shapes that looked like they were frozen in ice. My hands shook as I shined my flashlight on the cave walls. There were words, scratched into the rock in both English and what looked like a Native American language. Beware the cold that walks. I heard footsteps behind me and spun around, hand reaching for my flare gun. It was John Redfeather, one of the tribal elders who helped us with search and rescue operations. His usually calm face looked troubled. "You shouldn't be here, Hawk," he said quietly, looking at the cave paintings. "Not now, it's waking up." "What's waking up, John? What's happening to my forest?" He touched the paintings with weathered fingers. "Our people have stories, old stories about a creature that brings the winter. We call it the Wendigo. It sleeps for many years, then wakes when it hungers. The cold is its weapon. Its hunger is never satisfied." I wanted to tell him that monsters weren't real, that there had to be a logical explanation. But I remembered the frozen deer, the birds dropping from the warm sky, and that terrible laughing sound like cracking ice. "The hikers," I said. "Can they still be alive?" John's face grew darker. "If it has them, death would be a mercy. It likes to play with its food, Hawk. It keeps them alive, frozen but aware, and uses their voices to lure others." A scream echoed. Through the trees, a woman's voice. "Help, please, somebody help me." It sounded like it was coming from deeper in the forest. "That's not your hiker." John grabbed my arm as I started to move. "That's what it wants you to think. That's how hunts." The scream came again, closer this time. It sounded so real, so terrified. But now I could hear something else in it, a strange echo, like the voice was coming through layers of ice. The temperature started dropping again. My breath came out in white clouds, thicker than before. Above us, the summer sky was turning, dark with unnatural storm clouds. John pressed something into my hand, a small leather pouch with strange symbols stitched into it. "Take this. It might help. But Hawk..." He looked me straight in the eyes. "Whatever you hear, whatever you see, don't trust it. The cold that walks wears many faces." The screaming had stopped. The silence that followed was worse. My compass needle started spinning again, faster and faster, as the temperature kept dropping. Something was coming, and somehow I knew that finding those 3 missing hikers was about to become the least of my problems. Morning came with an unwelcome surprise. 2 young rangers, Mike Peterson and David Cooper, had been sent from headquarters to help with the search. Mike was fresh out of training, barely 22, with a big smile and too much energy. David was a bit older, maybe 30, and had the serious look of someone who'd seen enough to know better. "They shouldn't have sent you," I told them. checking my compass for the 100th time. This isn't a normal search and rescue. Come on. Hawk, Mike said, adjusting his backpack. 3 missing hikers, weird weather patterns, nothing we can't handle. If only he knew. I tried explaining what I'd seen. The frozen deer, the birds, the campsite with its frozen steam. David listened carefully, but Mike just grinned like it was all some big adventure. I didn't mention John Redfeather's warning, or the leather pouch he'd given me. Some things sound too crazy, even when you know they're true. We started up the North Trail, following reports of strange ice formations. The morning sun was bright, but it felt weak, like it was shining through. A layer of invisible frost. I kept my hand near my flare gun, though I wasn't sure why. Around noon, we found our first real evidence that something was terribly wrong. Hawk, David's voice cracked as he called from up ahead. You need to see this. There was a man frozen, solid in mid-run. His face was twisted in terror, one arm reaching forward, legs mid-stride. Ice covered him like glass, so clear we could see his wide eyes staring at something behind him. It was Tom Chen, one of our missing hikers. Mike lost his breakfast in the bushes. David just stood there, shaking his head like he was trying to wake up from a bad dream. This isn't possible, David kept saying. The human body doesn't freeze. Like this. Not this fast. Not this clear. I reached out to touch the ice around Tom. It was colder than any ice I'd ever felt. Colder than the winters in Korea during the war. My fingers stuck to it for a second, and when I pulled them away, the skin burned. Then it happened. The temperature dropped so fast our water bottles cracked. 50 degrees gone in seconds. The trees around us started to groan and crack as the sap inside them froze. Run! I yelled, but it was too late. The first tree exploded like a bomb, sending frozen splinters everywhere. Then another and another. We covered our heads and ran as the forest came apart around us. The sound was deafening, like artillery fire, bringing back memories I'd tried hard to forget. We made it to a small clearing, gasping for air that felt like needles in our lungs. That's when we heard it, a sound that didn't belong in nature. Like ice breaking on a frozen lake, but deeper, almost like words. Mike pointed up with a trembling finger. What is that? Through the falling snow in June, I saw something move between the trees. It was tall, so tall it had to bend under the branches. Its skin was gray and looked like old leather stretched over bones. But its head was a massive deer skull covered in strange markings that seemed to glow with a faint blue light. The thing moved like smoke, leaving trails of frost wherever it passed. The ground cracked under its feet, ice spreading like spider webs with each step. Nobody move, I whispered, though every part of me screamed to run. Then it turned and looked at us with empty eye sockets that somehow glowed with a cold blue light. The leather pouch John gave me felt warm against my chest, the only warm thing left in the world. Help me. Please help me. A woman's voice came from somewhere behind the creature. Jane Roberts had to be. But the voice was wrong, like it was being played through broken speakers. Mike took a step forward. We have to help. No! I grabbed his arm. Remember what I told you. Don't trust any voices. The creature's head snapped toward us too. Fast, like a snake striking. Its jaw opened wider than any deer's could, showing rows of icicle teeth. Run! I screamed, pulling out my flare gun. The thing was between us and the trail back to the ranger station. Head for the old fire watch cabin. Don't stop. I fired the flare straight at it. The red light lit up the clearing, reflecting off the ice everywhere. The creature screamed, a sound like a frozen lake breaking apart. The flare hit it in the chest, and for a second, I saw steam rise from its body. We ran. Oh God, we ran. Through trees that exploded around us, through snow that shouldn't exist, through air so cold it felt like breathing broken glass. Behind, that awful cracking laugh followed, getting closer and closer. Mike was fastest, then David, with me bringing up the rear. My old war wounds ached in the cold, slowing me down. The leather pouch bounced against my chest with each step, and I swear it was getting warmer. We were almost to the cabin when I heard David scream. I turned to look. I shouldn't have looked. What I saw then changed everything I thought I knew about the world. And the night that followed was just the beginning of our real nightmare. I've never felt so cold in my life, and I've never felt so alone. We made it to the fire watch cabin, but not all of us. What happened to David keeps playing in my head like a broken movie I can't turn off. One minute he was running beside me, and the next there was this sound like wind whistling through ice caves. A blast of frost hit him from behind. I watched. God help me, I watched, as the ice crawled up his legs, his body, his face. He didn't even have time to scream. He just froze, his hand reaching out to me for help I couldn't give. Mike and I barely made it to the cabin. We slammed the door shut and pushed everything we could find against it. Chairs, tables, an old filing cabinet. Outside, the wind howled like a living thing, and somewhere in that howl I could hear David's voice calling for help. "Make it stop," Mike whispered, covering his ears. "Please make it stop." The cabin was a simple place. One room, some basic supplies, emergency radio. But right now it felt like the last safe place in the world. I tried the radio, but all we got was static and this weird crackling sound, like ice forming on the common. "Beaker, what is that thing, Hawk?" Mike's voice shook. He was just a kid, really. Too young for this nightmare. "What does it want?" I pulled out John's leather pouch, which now felt hot enough to burn. Inside was a piece of paper with strange symbols drawn on it, and a small stone covered in the same markings we'd seen on the creature's skull. "John called it a Wendigo," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "An ancient spirit that brings winter and hunts people." Mike laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Hunts people? Like what it did to David?" Bang on the roof made us both jump. Snow was falling so hard now we could barely see through the windows, but the snow was wrong. It fell up sometimes, swirling in impossible patterns. The temperature kept dropping. Our breath came out in thick clouds that froze in midair and shattered, like tiny glass sculptures. The windows started frosting over, but the frost formed patterns. Faces, screaming faces. Then we heard it. David's voice, right outside the door. "Please, guys, let me in. I'm so cold. Please, I got away from it. Please." Mike jumped up. David, is that really you?" "Don't." I grabbed him before he could reach the door. "That's not David, not anymore." As if to prove me right, David's voice changed, becoming deeper, hollow, like it was echoing through a frozen cave. Then it started laughing, that terrible cracking ice sound. Something huge moved past the window. Even through the frost, I could see its shadow, 12 feet tall at least, with that massive skull head. Each step it took made the cabin creak and groan as the wood froze and contracted. Mike lost it then, just completely lost it. Before I could stop him, he was pulling away from me, running for the back window. "I can't stay here," he kept saying. "Can't stay here, can't stay here." The window shattered as he jumped through it. I heard him running through the snow, his footsteps crunching faster and faster. Then there was a sound like breaking glass, a short scream, and silence. I was alone. The leather pouch was burning, against my chest now. I pulled out the paper and stone again, and this time I noticed something. The symbols on the stone matched some of the markings I'd seen in that cave. The one with the warnings, more banging on the roof. Closer now. Ice was creeping under the door, spreading across the floor like fingers reaching for me. The walls groaned as they froze, the wood splitting and cracking. Then I saw it. Through a gap in the frost on the window, a cave entrance that shouldn't have been there. It was lined with more of those ancient markings, glowing faintly blue in the darkness. The same markings as on the stone in my hand. I heard Mike's voice now, joining David's in that horrible chorus outside. They were calling my name, begging me to come out, to save them. The creature was using them like puppets, trying to lure me out. But that cave, something about that cave felt important. The stone in my hand was growing warmer, pulling me toward it like a compass pointing north. I looked at my own compass, my lucky charm that had saved my life in the war. The needle was spinning wildly, but every time it passed that cave entrance, the stone in my hand pulsed with heat. The roof creaked one last time, and I knew I was out of options. The creature was right above me. Ice was forming on the ceiling, spreading down the walls. In a few seconds, the whole cabin would be frozen solid. With me in it, I had fought in wars. I had faced death before. But nothing had prepared me for what I was about to do next. I gripped the stone tight, took a deep breath of air so cold it burned, and made a choice that would either save my life or end it in the worst way possible. Sometimes the only way out is through. I learned that in the war, and now, facing a monster from ancient stories, it was time to use that lesson again. I grabbed my backpack, made sure my last flare gun was loaded, and took out the gasoline can we kept for emergencies. The cabin was almost completely frozen. Ice covered the walls like thick glass, and the ceiling groaned under the weight of whatever was up there. The stone in my hand burned hot, pointing toward that strange cave like an arrow. I took a deep breath, kicked open the back door, and ran. The cold hit me like a punch. The snow was falling sideways now, some of it moving against gravity, swirling in circles around me. Above the wind, I heard that awful laugh, that sound of cracking ice and voices calling my name. "Hawk! Help us, Hawk!" Mike's voice came from my left, then David's from my right. But I kept running straight for the cave. The stone grew, hotter with each step, almost too hot to hold. I made it to the cave entrance just as something huge landed behind me. The ground shook, and ice spread out in a circle from where it touched the earth. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just ran deeper into the cave. The walls were covered in those glowing blue markings, the same ones on the stone and the creature's skull. They lit my way as I ran, casting weird shadows that seemed to move on their own. The cave opened into a large chamber, and what I saw there almost made my heart stop. Ice statues, dozens of them. People frozen in moments of terror, reaching out for help that never came. I recognized Jane and Mike Roberts among them, and there, near the back, Mike Peterson, his face frozen in a silent scream. But they weren't just statues. Inside the ice, I could see their eyes moving. They were alive in there, aware, trapped. The temperature dropped even more, and I heard that sound again, ice cracking. But this time it formed words. Warm. The voice was like winter itself. So warm. I turned around slowly. It filled the cave entrance, 12 feet of ancient horror. Its deer skull head touched the ceiling, those blue lights in its eye sockets fixed on me. Its gray skin looked like old leather stretched over a skeleton, and frost spread from its feet with each step. Behind it, something moved in the shadows. A figure walked forward stiffly, like a puppet on strings. David Cooper. His skin was blue-white, frozen solid, but somehow he was moving. Ice crackled as he turned his head to look at me with frozen eyes. "You should have helped me, Hawk." David's voice came from his frozen lips. "Now you'll join us in the cold." The Wendigo reached for me with long, bony fingers. The air got so cold my tears froze on my face. But the stone in my hand. The stone was burning hotter than ever. That's when I noticed something. The markings on the walls, on the stone, on the creature's skull, they were the same, but in the cave they were different. Reversed, like a mirror image. The creature had made this cave its lair, but it had copied the markings wrong. I remembered what John said about the leather pouch. It might help. The stone wasn't just pointing me to the cave. It was showing me the creature's weakness. I pulled out the gasoline can and my flare gun. The Wendigo tilted its head, curious. Maybe it had. "Never seen fire before. You want warm?" I said through chattering teeth. "I'll give you warm." I threw the gasoline at its feet and fired my last flare. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the cave lit up like the sun. The Wendigo screamed, a sound like a glacier breaking apart. Fire spread along the gasoline trails, and where it touched the wrong markings on the walls, they flared with bright blue light. The creature thrashed, trying to back away from the flames, but the fire had cut off its escape. David's frozen body collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. The ice statues started to crack, steam rising from them as they began to thaw. The Wendigo's skull was cracking, those ancient markings splitting apart. It reached for me one last time, but its body was breaking up, melting and cracking all at once. With a sound like an avalanche, the creature shattered. The force of it knocked me back against the cave wall. Pieces of ancient ice flew everywhere, then melted into nothing before they hit the ground. The cave fell silent except for the crackle of dying flames and the sound of dripping water. One by one, the ice statues broke open. People fell out, gasping for air, alive but shaking with cold. Mike Peterson, the Roberts couple, even Tom Chen, all of them alive. David's frozen body was the last to thaw. It wasn't breathing at first, but I remembered my old war medic training. After what felt like forever doing CPR, he coughed and opened his eyes. "Hawk," he whispered. Did that really happen?" I helped him sit up, looking around at the cave. The markings had stopped glowing. The walls were just wet stone now. My lucky compass pointed straight north again, steady as ever. "Yeah," I said, helping the others to their feet. "It happened, but it's over now." But even as I said it, I noticed something that made my blood run cold one last time. Not all the ice had melted. In the deepest corner of the cave, a small patch of frost remained. And in that frost, a single marking glowed faintly blue, waiting. Like a seed in frozen ground, waiting for the next time it gets hungry. They said it was a freak storm system. That's what all the newspapers wrote about anyway. A weird weather pattern that no one could explain. Scientists came from all over to study the ice formations that stayed frozen even in the summer heat. But they never found that cave again. I tried to lead a team back there, but the entrance had disappeared, like it had never existed. All we found were normal rock walls and regular mountain caves. The survivors recovered in the hospital. Doctors couldn't explain how they lived through being frozen solid, or why they only lost a few fingers and toes to frostbite instead of dying. I lost 3 fingers on my right hand. They turned black from the cold and had to be removed. But considering what could have happened, I count myself lucky. David Cooper quit the Ranger Service. Can't blame him. He doesn't talk much about what it felt like being the creature's puppet, and I don't ask. Mike Peterson stayed on, though. Says somebody needs to keep an eye out just in case. He's a good kid, not so eager for adventure anymore, but wiser. John Redfeather visits sometimes. He took back the leather pouch with its sacred stone, saying it needed to be kept safe for the next time. When I asked him what he meant by next time, he just looked at me with sad eyes. "The cold that walks is as old as winter itself," he told. "You didn't kill it, you can't kill winter, you just made it sleep again." I still work these trails. Someone has to. But I've changed my routine a bit. I carry matches and gasoline with me now, even in summer. I've memorized those ancient markings, the right way they should look. And I've learned to listen, really listen, to the wind in the trees. Sometimes, on cold nights when the moon is full, I think I hear that laugh again. That sound like ice cracking in the darkness. When that happens, I touch my lucky compass and remember what I learned. Not all monsters are made up. Some are as real as the ground under your feet and the air in your lungs. Some have been here longer than us and will be here long after we're gone. But most importantly, I learned that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. Being brave means you face the thing that scares you anyway. You face it because somebody has to. Because if you don't, who will? Last week, I found something that made my blood run cold. A single deer, frozen solid, hidden in a shadowy grove where the summer sun doesn't reach. Around it, the ground was covered in frost, and in that frost, well, let's just say I've requested extra gasoline supplies. And I keep my radio close. Because winter is coming, and this time I'll be ready. End report. Robert Hawk, Hawthorne Senior Ranger, Mount Baker, Snoqualmie National Forest, June 25th, 1958. Next story. I used to think monsters weren't real. That was before I saw what happened in Red Rock Canyon last summer. Before I heard those howls that made my blood freeze. Before I watched my fellow rangers get torn apart by things that shouldn't exist. My name is Michael Rodriguez, and I'm a park ranger at Red Rock Canyon, Nevada. I've spent 15 years tracking and rescuing people in the wilderness. My Apache grandfather taught me everything about surviving in these canyons. How to read tracks, how to move silently, how to listen to what the desert is trying to tell you. But nothing could have prepared me for what I discovered that week. It started with a phone call about the missing Wilson family. Mom, Dad, and their 2 teenage kids hadn't checked in at the ranger station after their camping trip. No big deal, right? People are late all the time. But something felt wrong. The animals knew it too. I'd never seen so many deer and coyotes running away from the Hidden Valley area. They were scared of something up there. That's when the howls started. Night 1. The first signs. The sun was setting when I drove up to the Wilsons' last known campsite. The desert air was unusually cold for summer, and dark clouds were gathering overhead. Strange weather for Nevada. My flashlight beam cut through the growing darkness as I approached their campsite. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Usually, the desert is full of life at night. Crickets chirping, coyotes yapping in the distance. But there was nothing. Just dead silence. The Wilsons' blue family tent was still there, but something was wrong. The fabric was shredded, not torn like a bear would do it, but sliced clean through. Their camping gear was scattered everywhere. Sleeping bags ripped open, food containers crushed like they were made of paper. But it was the claw marks that made my skin crawl. I've dealt with mountain lions and bears my whole career. I know what their claws do to trees and tent fabric. These marks were different. They started at ground level and went up and up and up. 8 feet high on the Red Canyon wall. No animal I know can reach that height. Then I saw the tracks. Some looked like wolf prints, huge ones, bigger than any wolf I'd ever seen. But the weird thing was, they seemed to change. One set of prints would be clearly animal, then suddenly switch to something that looked almost human, but wasn't quite right. I radioed back to base. "This is Rodriguez. We've got a situation at Hidden Valley. Send backup at first light. And bring weapons. I don't know what we're dealing with here, but it's not good." That's when I heard it, a howl that made every hair on my body stand up. It wasn't like a normal wolf howl. It was deeper, almost like it had words hidden in it. And it wasn't coming from just one direction. The sounds were bouncing off the canyon walls, surrounding me. I grabbed my grandfather's eagle feather amulet, the one he gave me for protection before he died. For the first time in my career, I felt like prey. Something was watching me from the shadows, something that shouldn't exist. And the night was just beginning. I didn't sleep much after what I saw at the Wilsons' campsite. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those claw marks climbing up the canyon wall. At sunrise, 4 other rangers joined me at the station. There was Tom Miller, just 23 and fresh out of training, eager but scared. Sarah Chen, our best tracker besides me. Mike Watson, who'd been working these canyons longer than any of us. And Jack Foster, built like a football player and usually not afraid of anything. Today, though, even Jack looked worried. "Those howls last night," Sarah said, checking her rifle. "Never heard anything like them." I spread out the map on the table. "The Wilsons were last seen here." I pointed to Hidden Valley. "We'll split into 2 teams. Sarah and Jack, you take the North Trail. Tom, Mike, and I will check the South Caves. Stay in radio contact every 15 minutes. "What do you think did that to their tent?" Tom asked, his voice shaking a little. I touched my grandfather's eagle feather. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's big, it's smart, and it's not afraid of humans." The morning was hot and sticky. Storm clouds still hung around, unusual for this time of year. We hiked for hours, following tracks that kept disappearing and reappearing in weird places. Sometimes they looked like wolf prints, other times like bare human feet, but bigger than any I'd ever seen. "Look at this," Mike called out, kneeling by some bushes. The branches were broken at head height, way too high for a normal animal. And there was something else. Long, black fur caught in the thorns. When I touched it, it felt ice cold even in the hot sun. That's when Sarah's voice crackled over the radio. "Rodriguez, you need to see this." We jogged over to their position. Sarah and Jack were standing in front of a cave entrance looking. Bloody. Inside we found another torn-up campsite. But this one wasn't the Wilsons. This was older, maybe weeks old. The walls were covered in those same huge claw marks, and in the dirt. "Are those bones?" Tom whispered. They were. Small ones, probably from deer or coyotes. But they weren't just scattered around. They were arranged in a pattern, like whatever did this was trying to tell us something. Jack picked up a torn backpack. The name Anderson was written on it in faded marker. I remembered the case. A hiker who went missing last month. We never found him. Thunder rumbled overhead as dark clouds rolled in. The wind picked up, carrying with it a smell like wet dog. And something worse. Something rotten. "We should go," Mike said. "It'll be dark soon." But as we turned to leave, we heard it. That deep howl again. Only this time it wasn't just one. The howls came from all around us, echoing off the canyon, walls. They sounded closer now and hungry. Tom's flashlight beam caught something moving in the shadows. Something big. Something that walked on two legs, then dropped to all fours. "Run," I whispered. "Run!" We sprinted back toward the ranger station, the howls following us all the way. That night, none of us slept. We sat in the station, guns ready, listening to those things circling outside in the darkness. They were hunting us now, and somehow I knew. This was just the beginning. Morning came, but nobody wanted to go back out there. We all saw those shapes in the darkness. We all heard those howls that didn't sound like any normal wolf. "We can't just sit here," I said, looking at my team's tired faces. "There's still a family out there. If they're even still alive," Jack muttered. But he picked up his rifle anyway. This time we stayed together as one group. The sun was hot overhead, but none of us felt warm. Every shadow made us jump. Every sound made us spin around, guns ready. We followed the strange tracks to a narrow canyon. The walls rose up on both sides like giant red hands reaching for the sky. Sarah pointed to marks on the rocks. More of those claw scratches, but this time they told a story. Something had been climbing these walls, moving from shadow to shadow. That's when Tom spotted something blue in the distance. "Is that Mrs. Wilson's jacket?" he asked. It was hanging on a bush, torn and dirty. But the strange thing was how it got there. This spot was at least 20 feet up the canyon wall. How did it? Tom started to ask, and then we heard it. That howl again. But this time it was different. This time it had a purpose. The sound hit us like a physical thing. I felt my muscles freeze up. We all did, except for Tom. He stood there, eyes wide with fear, completely unable to move. "Tom!" Sarah screamed. "Tom, run!" But he couldn't. None of us could move to help him. We could only watch as something huge and black stepped out of a shadow on the canyon wall. Not out from behind it, out of it, like the shadow was a door. It was like a wolf, but wrong. It stood on two legs, tall as a basketball hoop. Its fur was midnight black with silver tips that seemed to move in a wind that wasn't there. But its eyes were bright amber, glowing like hot coals. More. Shapes emerged from the shadows, 5, 6, 7 of them. They moved like liquid darkness surrounding us. The biggest one, their leader, I guess, reached for Tom. Its claws gleamed in the sunlight. That's when I remembered something my grandfather told me about the old stories. About creatures that walked like men but weren't men. About how they used shadows to hunt. "Close your eyes," I shouted. "Don't look at their eyes." I squeezed my eyes shut and felt the paralysis break. I fired my rifle blindly toward where I'd seen the creatures. The others did the same. The things snarled. A sound that was almost words. I heard Tom scream, heard his boots scraping on rock as they dragged him away. When we opened our eyes, Tom was gone. The creatures were gone too, melted back into the shadows. But they left us a message, written in deep claw marks on the canyon wall. "Leave or join them," Mike threw up. Jack started praying. Sarah just stood there, staring at where Tom had been. But I was remembering more of my grandfather's stories, about how his people had fought creatures like this before, about how they'd survived. "We need to get back," I said. "I need to check something in my grandfather's old journals." As we walked back, the sun started to set. None of us wanted to be out here in the dark, not now that we knew what was hiding in the shadows. That night, I dug through my grandfather's things, looking for anything that might help us survive, because I knew one thing for sure. Those creatures, whatever they were, weren't going to stop. And somewhere out there in the darkness, they had Tom, and maybe the Wilsons too. The question was, were they still alive? I spent all night reading my grandfather's old leather journal. The pages were yellow and crumbly, but they held the answers we needed. There were drawings of the creatures, stories about how they hunted, and most importantly, how to fight them. "They're called shadow walkers," I told the others in the morning. "My grandfather's people fought them a long time ago. They hate fire and certain symbols. If we draw these circles," I showed them the journal's drawings, "they can't cross them." "Circles?" Jack laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "Tom got dragged away by monster wolves and you want to draw circles? You got a better idea?" Sarah snapped. She hadn't slept at all. Mike was looking out the window. "Guys, you need to see this." Outside in the dirt parking lot, something had drawn pictures. They were like cave paintings, showing stick figures being hunted down one by one. The last figure was alone, surrounded by wolf shapes. "They're playing with us," Sarah whispered. "No," I said. "They're trying to scare us, and it's working. We packed everything we could think of: flares, ropes, first aid kits, and lots of ammo." I copied the protective circles from my grandfather's journal onto pieces of paper. Each of us took some. "We go to their den," I said. "That's where they'll have Tom and the Wilsons, if they're still alive." The hike up was quiet. Too quiet. No birds, no insects, nothing. Just our boots crunching on rocks and our heavy breathing. We found the den entrance in a dark corner of the canyon where two walls met. The ground around it was littered with bones. Deer bones, coyote bones, and some that looked human. "Mike, Sarah, you watch the entrance," I said. "Jack and I will." That's when we heard Mike scream. We spun around just in time to see a huge black shape grab him from behind. But it didn't come from the cave. It came right out of Mike's own shadow. Sarah fired her rifle. The creature snarled and threw Mike against the canyon wall like he was a rag doll. He didn't get up. "The circles," I yelled, pulling out the paper with the symbols. "Draw them around us." Sarah started drawing with a piece of chalk, but another creature, this one with red eyes, leaped down from above. Its claws caught her shoulder, spinning her around. She fell into a narrow gap between two rocks. "Sarah," Jack ran to help her. "No, wait," but it was too late. More shadow shapes poured out of the darkness between the rocks. They moved like smoke, but their claws were real enough. Jack got 2 shots off before they pulled him into the shadows. His scream cut off suddenly. I threw down the protective circles and grabbed my flare gun. The red flare lit up the canyon like daylight. The creatures hissed and backed away, their eyes glowing with hate. For a moment I saw them clearly, 8 feet tall, walking on 2 legs, with faces that were a horrible mix of wolf and human. Their fur rippled like shadows on water. Then I saw movement by the cave entrance. Someone was crawling out. It was Tom. But something was wrong. His eyes were glowing amber. He smiled at me, showing teeth that were too long and sharp to be human anymore. When he spoke, his voice was like gravel. "Join us, Michael, the pack is waiting." Behind him, more shapes moved in the cave. I saw the Wilson family, but they weren't the Wilsons anymore. Their shadows stretched out wrong, and their eyes glowed in the darkness. I ran. I'm not ashamed to say it. I ran as fast as I could, the sound of howls and not quite human laughter, following me all the way back to the ranger station. Night was falling, and I knew they'd be coming for me soon. But now I knew where they were. Now I knew what they could do. And I had a plan, a crazy plan, but it was all I had left. I just hoped I'd live long enough to make it work. My plan was crazy, but it was all I had left. I spent hours in the Ranger station getting ready. First, I recorded the creature's howls from last night on my phone. Then I grabbed every flare and flashlight I could find. Last, I took my grandfather's eagle feather and tied it to my vest. "Watch over me, grandfather," I whispered. "I'm going to need your help tonight." Just before sunset, I hiked back up to Hidden Valley. This time I wasn't trying to be quiet. I wanted them to know I was coming. I stopped at the narrowest part of the canyon. The walls rose up like giant red walls on both sides. This was where I'd make my stand. "I know you can hear." "Me," I shouted. My voice echoed off the canyon walls. "Come and get me." The sun set. Darkness crept into the canyon like spilled ink. That's when I heard them. Footsteps. But not animal footsteps. They sounded almost human. Out of the shadows came Tom. Behind him were the Wilsons, their eyes glowing amber in the darkness. More shapes moved in the shadows. The whole pack was here. "Why fight us, Michael?" Tom's voice was different now, rougher. "The pack is strong. We're family." "You're not Tom anymore," I said. "And they're not the Wilsons, you're just wearing their skins." The largest creature stepped forward, the pack leader. It walked on two legs, its black fur rippling like smoke. When it spoke, its voice was like rocks grinding together. "Brave little ranger. Your grandfather's people knew us. They feared us, join us or die." I pressed play on my phone. Their own howls blasted from the speakers I'd hidden in the canyon. The sound bounced off the walls, coming from everywhere at once. The creatures looked around, confused. They couldn't tell which howls were real and which weren't. That's when I threw the first flare. Red light exploded through the canyon. The creatures screamed, a sound that was half wolf, half human. They tried to escape into the shadows, but the light was too bright. There was nowhere to hide. I threw more flares, herding them deeper into the canyon. They were so busy trying to avoid the light that they didn't notice I was leading them into a trap. At the narrowest part of the canyon, I'd drawn my grandfather's protective circles, big ones, all the way across the path. As soon as the first creature stepped into the circle, it froze. It couldn't move forward or back. "Now!" I shouted. Rangers from 3 other parks had been waiting up on the canyon walls. They thought I was crazy when I called them, but they came anyway. Now they threw down their flares and flashlights, creating a wall of light. The creatures were trapped between the circles and the light. They couldn't melt into shadows because there were no shadows left. The pack leader snarled and charged at me, but I was ready. I had one last flare, and I shot it right into its open mouth. The sound it made, I'll never forget it, like 1,000 wolves howling at once. The other creatures screamed too. Their fur began to smoke and fade, like shadows at noon. Then, just like that, they were gone. All that was left were piles of black fur that turned to dust when I touched them. Where Tom and the Wilsons had stood, there were just empty clothes on the ground. Epilogue, that was 3 months ago. The official report says we had a wild animal. Problem that got handled. Nobody wants to believe what really happened. They found the Wilsons' camera a week later, the photos on it. Well, let's just say that camera is locked up somewhere safe now. I still work at Red Rock Canyon. Someone has to keep watch. Because sometimes, on really dark nights, I hear howls in the distance. And when I look at my shadow, sometimes I think, it moves when I don't. I keep my grandfather's eagle feather with me always. And I've learned to stay out of dark places, because now I know the truth. Monsters are real. They live in the shadows, watching, waiting. And if you're not careful, if you don't know the old ways to fight them, they'll take you too. Just ask. Me, I'm the only one left who can tell the tale. But sometimes I wonder, did I really get them all? Or are they just waiting, growing stronger, planning their next hunt? All I know is this. If you're ever hiking in Red Rock Canyon and you hear a strange howl, don't convince yourself it's just a regular wolf. Run. Run as fast as you can toward the light, and whatever you do, don't look back at your shadow. because it might not be yours anymore. Next story. The day everything changed started with dead silence. Not the peaceful kind you get on a snowy morning, but the scary kind, like someone hit a giant mute button on the whole forest. I've worked as a ranger in Yellowstone for 15 years, and I've never heard anything like it. Or rather, never heard nothing like it. My name is Catherine Sullivan, Kate to everyone except my mom, and I'm supposed to know this forest better than anyone. At least, that's what they tell me. PhD in wildlife biology and all that fancy stuff, but nothing in my books prepared me for what happened that fall. I was doing my usual morning walk along the old-growth trail when I first noticed something was off. The birds had stopped singing. All of them. At once. Even my footsteps seemed muffled, like I was walking on cotton instead of crunchy fall leaves. I pulled out my worn leather journal, the one I've carried since my first day here, and wrote down the time, 8:47 a.m. That's when I saw the trees. Now, I know how crazy this sounds, but I swear on everything I believe in, the trees were bending. The wrong way. The wind was blowing from the east, I'm sure of it. I felt it on my face, but these massive ancient pines were leaning west, all of them. Like they were trying to point at something. My white hair, yeah, it turned early, runs in the family, was whipping around my face in the east wind, while these giant trees just refused to follow the rules of nature. I took out my phone to record it, but of course there was no signal. There never is in this part of the park, but today it felt different, more intentional. Then came the animals. First it was a group of elk, usually pretty calm creatures. They ran past me like something was chasing them, but their eyes, I'll never forget their eyes. They looked almost human, filled with a kind of awareness I've never seen in an animal before. Behind them came a pack of wolves, but they weren't chasing the elk. They were running alongside them, like they were all fleeing from the same thing. The weirdest part? The thermal vents started acting up. We're used to the hot springs and geysers doing their thing here in Yellowstone, but this was different. Steam started rising from spots where there had never been thermal activity before. The ground felt warm under my boots, and there was this, well, not the usual sulfur stink, but something earthier, older. I'm a scientist. I don't believe in monsters or ghost stories, but standing there in that unnaturally silent forest, watching the laws of nature bend right in front of me, I felt something I hadn't experienced since I was a little kid sleeping with a nightlight. Pure, simple fear. I made my way back to the ranger station, my boots feeling heavier with each step. The whole time I kept writing in my journal, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. That's what scientists do, right? We observe, we record, we try to understand. But deep down, I had this feeling that what was happening in my forest was beyond any textbook explanation. By the time I reached the station, the sun was high in the sky, but it felt dim somehow, like something was partially blocking its light. I looked at my last journal entry before closing the book. The forest is trying to tell us something. For the first time in my career, I'm afraid to listen. I didn't know it then, but that was just the beginning. Looking back now, I wish I had run far and fast that first morning. But I didn't. I stayed, because that's what rangers do. We protect our forest, even when it turns against us. Even when it starts whispering things that no human was ever meant to hear. Tomorrow, we're sending out a team to investigate. 5 of us, all experienced rangers. We'll have cameras, sensors, all the scientific equipment we can carry. But somehow, I don't think any of that will help us understand what's really happening in these ancient woods. I should be preparing for tomorrow's expedition, but instead, I'm sitting here, writing this down. Because if something happens to me, to any of us, somebody needs to know how it started. How the forest went quiet, the trees bent against the wind, and all the animals started running from something they could sense but we couldn't see. Yet, morning came too quickly. I hadn't slept much, kept thinking about those animals running together, prey and predator side by side. That's not normal. Not normal at all. We met at the ranger station at dawn, 5 of us total. There was Mike, our best tracker, who could Read animal prints like most people read books. Sarah handled the cameras and tech stuff. Tom and Rachel were the newest rangers, but they knew the old growth section better than anyone. And then there was me, trying to look calm while my hands shook as I checked my backpack one last time. Everyone remember the buddy system, I said, pulling out my map. No one goes anywhere alone, not after what happened yesterday. They nodded, but I could tell they thought I was overreacting. They hadn't seen what I'd seen. We split into two groups. Mike and Sarah headed west to set up wildlife cameras, while Tom, Rachel, and I went to check out the area where I'd seen the trees bending. The morning was cold, and our breath made little clouds in the air. Everything seemed normal, almost too normal. "Look at this," Mike's voice crackled through our radio about an hour in. "Kate, you need to see this." We found them standing in front of a massive old pine tree. Its trunk was twisted, not bent like yesterday, but actually twisted, like someone had grabbed it and wrung it like a wet towel. Around its base, smaller trees were bent to form a perfect circle. In the middle of that circle, the ground was bare. No leaves, no pine needles, not even dirt. Just smooth black rock. Sarah was checking the memory card from one of the cameras she'd set up earlier in the week. Her hands were shaking. "This can't be right," she whispered, turning her tablet so we could see. The footage showed the forest. At night, normal at first. Then at exactly 3:33 a.m., the screen went dark. When the image came back 30 seconds later, all the trees were twisted. Just like that. No movement, no process. They just changed. That's when we noticed Mike was acting strange. He kept staring at the twisted trees, his head tilted like he was listening to something. His eyes looked glazed over. "Mike?" I touched his shoulder. "You okay?" He blinked slowly. "They're talking," he said, his voice flat. "Can't you hear them?" Rachel stepped back. "Nobody's talking, Mike." "The trees," he said. "They're saying we need to go deeper, into the old part, where the ground breathes." A chill ran down my spine. The old part was what we called the deepest section of old-growth forest, where the trees were ancient and the thermal vents made the ground steam. We never went there alone. "Mike, snap out of it." Tom shook him gently. Mike looked around, confused. "What? What happened?" "You were..." I paused, writing quickly in my journal. "You were saying the trees were talking to you." He rubbed his face. "I don't remember that." We all jumped as Sarah's tablet beeped. Another camera had picked something up. The image was blurry, but it showed something huge moving between the trees. The strange part? The thing cast no shadow, even though the camera's infrared light should have made one. "We need to check the thermal readings," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Something's not right with the ground temperature." We pulled out our equipment. The readings made no sense. Patches of ground were way too hot, while others were freezing cold. The patterns kept changing, like something underground was moving. Round. That's when we found the symbols. At first, we thought they were just random patterns in the bark of the trees, but they were on every tree in this area, and they looked deliberate, like writing, but not any language I'd ever seen. Rachel went to take a picture of one, but her camera wouldn't work. None of our electronics would. Even our radios went. "Dead. We should head back," Tom said quietly. "Report what we found." Nobody argued. As we walked back, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Not by anything hiding in the trees, by the trees themselves. Back at the station, Mike couldn't remember anything about the talking trees. He seemed fine now, but something had changed in him. I caught him staring out the window at the forest. More than once, like he was waiting for something. I stayed late, copying everything into my journal. Twisted trees, the strange symbols, the thing with no shadow, Mike's weird behavior. Looking at it all written down, it started to make a terrible kind of sense. Something was out there. Something that could control nature itself. As I wrote, the last entry for the day, I heard a sound outside my window. A deep, low rumble like the purr of some giant cat. But when I looked out, all I saw were trees, their branches swaying against the wind. Again. Tomorrow we're going back out. We have to. But this time we're bringing better equipment. Thermal cameras, seismic sensors, anything that might help us understand what's happening to our forest. I just hope we're not already too late. I woke up to banging on my door. It was Sarah, her face pale in the early morning darkness. "Mike's gone," she said. "He left a note, saying he had to go back to the forest, that they were calling him." My stomach dropped. The temperature reading on my wall thermometer showed 38 degrees, but the window was sweating like it was middle of summer. Something was very wrong. We gathered everyone quickly. Tom found tracks leading from Mike's cabin straight into the old growth section. As we followed them, I noticed something strange. There were wolf prints alongside Mike's boots. Not following him, walking with him. "Wait," Rachel said, pointing at her tablet. "The thermal activity is off the charts. Look at this pattern." The heat signatures formed a perfect spiral on her screen, with Mike's tracks leading right to the center. We'd never seen anything like it. That's when we heard the howling. It wasn't like normal wolf howls. These sounded organized, like they were singing together. We followed the sound and found something that still haunts me. There was Mike, standing in a clearing. Around him, in a perfect circle, was the largest wolf pack I'd ever seen. At least 20 wolves. But they weren't acting like wolves. They were sitting quietly, all facing the same direction, looking at something in the trees. That's when we saw it. I'm a scientist. I deal in facts, in things I can measure and prove. But what I saw standing there defied everything I knew about nature. It was huge, maybe 9 feet tall. Its fur was reddish-brown, but its back was silvery, catching the morning light like frost. But it was the eyes that got me. They weren't animal eyes. They were intelligent, almost human, but older, somehow. Much older. "Mike," I called out softly. "Mike, can you hear me?" He turned, but his eyes were different too. Empty, like he was sleeping with his eyes open. "They've always been here," he said in that same flat voice from yesterday. "Watching, waiting, the old ones." The creature, I can't think of a better word for it, turned its head to look at us. The moment it did, I felt a pressure in my mind, like someone was gently trying to open a door in my thoughts. Tom screamed. He grabbed his head and fell to his knees. Rachel ran to help him, but she froze halfway there, her body going stiff like statue. I felt it too. The push to just let go, to let something else take control. But my science training kicked in. I focused on facts, on numbers, on the things I knew were real. The pressure lessened. "The heat," I managed to say to Sarah, who was still standing. "It's connected to the thermal vents. The creature, it's using the Earth's energy somehow." Sarah nodded, her face sweating. She was fighting it too. "I found something in the old ranger files," she gasped. "Records from Native American tribes. They knew about this, called it the forest walker, said it came from deep underground where the Earth's blood runs hot." The creature took a step forward. The ground trembled. All the wolves turned to look at us, their eyes glowing with an unnatural blue light. "Run," I whispered to Sarah. "Get back to the station, find those files. What about you? I'll get them out, somehow." The creature raised its hand and the trees around us groaned. Branches started twisting, trying to block our path. Sarah slipped through just in time. I pulled out my journal and started writing frantically, documenting everything I saw. The creature, the wolves, the way it was controlling everything around us. If we didn't make it, someone needed to know. Mike started walking toward the creature. Tom was still on the ground, holding his head. Rachel stood frozen, tears running down her face. That's when I noticed something. Every time the creature used its power, to control the wolves, to bend the trees, to reach into our minds, the thermal readings spiked. It wasn't just using the Earth's energy. It was energy somehow. And energy follows rules. Even this kind. Started backing away, pulling my tablet out. If I could just understand the pattern. The creature made a sound then, not quite a roar, not quite a word. The wolves stood up. Mike turned to us, but he was smiling now. a horrible, empty smile. "Join us," he said. "See what they want to show us deep below, where it all began." I grabbed Tom's arm and pulled. Rachel suddenly unfroze, gasping like she'd been underwater. We ran. Behind us, the howling started again. But now there was another sound mixed in. A deeper sound, like the mountain itself was calling out. We made it back to the station, but we all knew this wasn't over. Sarah had found the old files, yellowed papers full of warnings and maps. They showed something beneath the old growth section, something the tribes had tried to seal away long ago. Tom was better now, but quiet. Really quiet. Rachel couldn't stop shaking, and somewhere out there Mike was still in the forest, with that thing. Night fell. The thermal readings kept spiking. Through my window I could see the trees in the distance, their branches moving without any wind. Tomorrow we'll have to go back. We have to try to save Mike. But first, I need to understand what this thing is, what it wants, and most importantly, how to stop it. If you're reading this journal and I don't make it back, well, at least now you know what's out there, in the deep parts of the forest, where the ground breathes and the trees whisper, and something ancient is finally waking. None of us slept last night, how could we? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those wolf packs with their glowing blue eyes, and Mike's empty face, and that thing, that creature, watching us with those ancient knowing eyes. Sarah spent the night studying the old tribal records. Her hands shook as she spread them across my desk this morning. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a crude drawing. It showed the creature standing over what looked like a crack in the earth, with wavy lines coming up from it. They called it the Guardian. It's not just using the thermal vents, it's protecting them. Or, she paused, protecting something inside them. A crash from outside made us jump. It was Tom. He'd dropped his coffee mug and was staring out the window, completely still. "Tom?" Rachel touched his shoulder. "What's wrong? Can't you hear it?" He whispered. It's in my head, showing me things. Beautiful things, terrible things." Before we could stop him, Tom bolted out the door. Rachel ran after him, but I grabbed her arm. "Wait," I said. "Look at the thermal scanner." The readings were going crazy. Hot spots were appearing and disappearing, all over the forest, like something was moving underground, moving toward us. That's when the headaches started. First Rachel clutched her head, then Sarah. I felt it too, like someone was gently knocking on the door of my mind, asking to be let in, but I'm stubborn. Always have been. Instead of fighting the pressure, I focused on it, studied it, like I would any other natural phenomenon. Every time the pressure got stronger, the thermal readings changed. There was a pattern, something about the way the heat moved through the ground. "The vents," I mumbled, scribbling in my journal. "They're like a network, a nervous system, and the creature is using them to reach out, to reach into our minds." Sarah's nose started bleeding. Rachel couldn't stand up straight, but understanding the pattern helped me resist. "Think about numbers," I shouted to them. "Facts, anything logical, it helps." Sarah started reciting the periodic table. Rachel counted backwards from 100. The pressure eased a little, but then we heard Tom's voice outside, and Mike's. They were calling to us. "Come see," they said together, their voices flat and empty. "Come understand. The earth is waking up. The old ones are returning." Through the window, I could see them standing at the forest's edge. Behind them, the trees were twisting into impossible shapes, forming archways and spirals. It was beautiful, in a terrifying way. The pressure in my head got worse. Images started flashing through my mind. Caves deep underground, glowing with strange light. Ancient beings sleeping in the earth's heart. A power older than humanity, waiting to be unleashed. "No!" I slammed my fist on the desk. The pain helped clear my head. "This isn't real, it's just energy. Energy we can understand, maybe even control." I looked at my thermal readings again. Every time the creature used its power, heat gathered in specific spots, like it needed to collect energy before it could act. "Sarah," I gasped, fighting against another wave of mental pressure. The old records. Did they say anything about how the tribes fought this thing? She fumbled through the papers, her hands shaking. They used the heat against it somehow, led it to the hottest vents and she couldn't finish. Her eyes went blank, just like Mike's had, just like Tom's. The ground breathes, she said in that horrible flat voice. The ground hungers. Come join us, Kate. Come see what's waiting, Rachel screamed. I turned to see her, backing away from the window. Outside, more shapes were emerging from the forest. All the missing hikers we'd been looking for over the past month. All walking together, all wearing the same empty smile. I grabbed Rachel's arm and pulled her into my office, locking the door. Sarah's voice joined the others outside, calling us to come out. Think, I told myself, writing frantically in my journal. Think like a scientist. The creature was using the thermal vents for power. It was drawing energy up from deep underground, but energy can be redirected, interrupted. If we could just figure out how... I pulled out the old maps, comparing them to my thermal readings. There was one spot where all the heat lines crossed, one place where the energy was strongest. Rachel, I said, grabbing her shoulders, listen to me. I know what we have to do, but it's dangerous, really dangerous. She wiped her eyes, trying to focus. More dangerous than this? Outside, the voices kept calling. The pressure in our heads got worse, but now I had a plan. A crazy, terrible plan. We need to go to the central vent, I said, drawing a quick map in my journal. Where all the heat lines meet, and we need to take something with us. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the emergency flares. The creature uses heat for power, I said, checking how many flares we had. Let's give it more heat than it can handle. Night was falling. Through the window, I could see our friends standing perfectly still, waiting for us. Behind them, something huge moved in the darkness of the forest. Tomorrow would be our last chance. Either we'd save our friends and stop this thing, or, well, that's why I'm writing all this down, just in case. The pressure in my head is getting worse, the voices are getting louder, but I won't let it in. I can't. Because tomorrow we're going to find out what happens when an ancient, powerful being gets more of what it wants than it can handle. I just hope we survive to tell about it. Dawn came with a red sky. The kind my grandmother used to say was a warning. Ready? I asked Rachel. She was the only one left now. The only one still, herself. She nodded, checking her backpack full of flares, as I'll ever be. We'd spent the night barricaded in my office, listening to the others calling us. Their voices never stopped, never got tired, just kept asking us to come out, to join them, to see the beautiful, terrible things waiting in the deep places. The plan was simple, maybe too simple, but it was all we had. The main thermal vent, I explained again, pointing at my map, where all the heat lines meet. If this thing needs energy to control minds, let's give it so much energy it can't handle it, like overloading a circuit. We slipped out the back door of the station just as the sun cleared the mountains. The morning was unusually warm. Steam rose from the ground in patches, making it look like the earth was breathing. They were waiting for us. All of them. Mike, Tom, Sarah, and at least 20 hikers we'd been searching for over the past month. They stood in a perfect circle around the station, their eyes empty, their faces wearing those horrible, peaceful smiles. Come join us, Kate, Mike said, his voice flat. Come see what's waiting. The ground breathes, Sarah added. The ground hungers, Tom finished. Behind them I saw movement in the trees. Something huge, something watching. Run! I grabbed Rachel's arm and we bolted past them. They didn't try to stop us. They didn't need to. They knew where we were going. The forest had changed overnight. The trees had twisted themselves into archways and tunnels, all leading deeper into the old growth section, toward the central vent. The pressure in my head got worse with every step. Images flashed through my mind, caves full of strange light, ancient beings stirring from sleep, a power that could reshape the world. Keep thinking about numbers, I shouted to Rachel. Remember the pattern. She nodded, gasping. 7 times 8 is 56. 7 times 9 is 63. The ground. got hotter as we ran. Steam burst from small cracks in the earth. The air smelled like sulfur and something else, something older. Then we saw it. The central vent, a crack in the earth about 6 feet wide, glowing with orange light from deep below. The heat coming from it was incredible, and there it stood. The creature, the guardian, 9 feet tall, its reddish-brown fur steaming in the hot air, its silver back catching the morning light. Those intelligent, ancient eyes fixed right on us. Our friends emerged from the trees behind us. The wolf pack appeared too, their eyes glowing that unnatural blue. We were surrounded. The pressure in my head became almost unbearable. The creature raised its hand, and I felt my legs go weak. Beside me, Rachel dropped to her knees. "Now!" I screamed. "The flares, all of them!" With shaking hands, we pulled out the flares and lit them, one after another after another. The creature tilted its head, curious. "You want energy?" I shouted, fighting to stay conscious. "You want heat? Take it all." I threw the first flare into the vent. Rachel threw another. The creature's eyes widened. It understood. The ground started to shake. Steam exploded from the vent, carrying the heat of the flares back down into the earth's heart. The creature stumbled. The pressure in my head weakened for a moment. "More!" I grabbed another flare. Another, each one making the ground shake harder. The steam burst higher. The creature made a sound, not quite a roar, not quite a scream. It reached for us, but its movements were jerky now, uncontrolled. The wolves started howling in confusion. That's when I saw it, the pattern in my thermal reader. The energy wasn't just flowing up anymore. It was flowing sideways, spreading out, too fast, too hot. "Rachel," I said quietly. "Run." "What? No, I won't leave you." "Someone has to tell this story." I handed her my journal. "Someone has to warn them. Now run." She looked at me for a long moment, then turned and ran. The others tried to follow her, but they were slow, confused. The creature's control was breaking. I turned back to the vent, to the creature. Its eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw something in them besides ancient intelligence. I saw fear. I lit the last flare. "Let them go," I said, "or I drop this and we all find out what happens when too much heat hits whatever's down there." The creature took a step forward. The ground cracked under its foot. Final warning. I held the flare over the vent. "Let them go." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, our friends collapsed. The wolves ran away. The pressure in my head vanished. The creature looked at me one last time. Not with anger, with respect. Then it looked down, into the vent, and I understood. It hadn't been trying to wake something up. It had been trying to keep something asleep. The ground started to crack. Red light shone through the gaps. The heat became unbearable. I looked at the flare in my hand, looked at the vent, looked at my unconscious friends. "I'm sorry," I whispered. Then I jumped. The last thing I remember was falling toward orange light and ancient heat, falling with a creature that had watched over this place since before humans walked the earth, falling to make sure whatever slept down there kept sleeping. And now you're reading my journal. Rachel must have made out, must have told our story. If you're reading this and you're thinking about coming to find me, don't. Some places should stay lost. Some things should stay buried. But if you're in the forest and the ground feels too warm, and the trees start to bend against the wind, and everything goes quiet, run. Run while you still can. Catherine Sullivan Sr., Park Ranger, Yellowstone National Park, from the official Yellowstone Park Incident Report, 1 week later. The rangers we found didn't remember much. Mike said it felt like waking up from a long, strange dream. Tom and Sarah were the same. Even the missing hikers we recovered couldn't explain where they'd been or what they'd done for all those days. Rachel was the only one who remembered everything. She handed over Kate's journal to the park authorities, her hands shaking as she did. "Read it," was all she said. "Read it and believe it." The old growth section is different now. The trees stand straight again, but nothing grows in a perfect circle around where the central vent used to be. The ground there is cold, colder than it should be, even in winter. like all the heat got sucked out of it at once. The animals avoid that area completely. Even the bugs won't go there. The wolves that were part of that strange pack, they're still around, but they stay far from that part of the forest. Sometimes, at night, they howl in a way that sounds almost like crying. Park. Scientists say the thermal activity in that section has stopped completely. It's like something sealed all the vents shut deep underground. They keep trying to study it, but their equipment always breaks when they get too close. We never found Kate's body, just her ranger badge, lying at the edge of where the vent used to be. It was cold to the touch even though it was sitting in direct sunlight. The strangest thing? On quiet nights when the wind is just right, people say they can hear something. Not quite a voice, not quite a whisper, like someone trying to warn them from very far away. The Park Service wanted to open the old growth section again. Rachel quit her job the day they suggested it. The other rangers followed. Now that area is marked as permanently closed due to geological instability. But some of us know the truth. Some of us read Kate's journal. Some of us remember that sometimes the most dangerous things aren't the ones that try to hurt you. Sometimes they're the ones that try to show you something you were never supposed to see. If you're hiking in Yellowstone and you see signs for the old growth section, turn back. If you feel the ground getting warm under your feet, turn back. If everything goes quiet, too quiet, turn back. Because maybe, just maybe, Kate is still down there, still standing guard, still keeping whatever sleeps in the earth's heart from waking up. And maybe, just maybe, she's trying to tell us something. Listen to her. Turn back. End report. Note: Kate Sullivan's journal has been sealed in the park's restricted archives. Access denied to all personnel below Level 4 clearance. Next story. The radio crackled to life at 6:43 a.m. Another hiker had vanished into the fog. I'm Marcus Thompson, park ranger at the Great Smoky Mountains, and I've seen things in the mist that no one would believe. Things that still wake me up at night drenched in cold sweat. But I need to tell this story. Maybe it'll help someone else survive what I went through on Ghost Mountain. That morning started like any other. I was sipping my coffee in the ranger station, rubbing the old scar on my throat, a reminder from my Marine Corps days, when the call came in. Sarah, one of our part-time rangers, reported that a family of 3 had gone hiking yesterday and never returned to their campsite. Their tent was still there, food untouched, but their clothes were found scattered on the trail. Empty clothes, no blood, no signs of animals. Just empty clothes laid out like their owners had melted into thin air. This was the 4th disappearance this month. All the same pattern. All in that strange fog that wouldn't lift. I pulled out my map and traced my finger along Ghost Mountain Trail. The disappearances formed a pattern I didn't like. Each one happened deeper in the valley, closer to those old burial grounds the local tribes warned us about. The ones they said we should never have built trails near. My Marine Corps medallion felt heavy in my pocket as I grabbed my gear. The fog outside was thick, thicker than any natural fog should be. It curled around the trees like fingers, and sometimes, when you looked at it just right, it seemed to move against the wind. Thompson, Dave, my supervisor, called from his office. Got some folks from the county here about those missing hikers. They're saying something about strange echoes in the valleys, people hearing voices that shouldn't be there. I walked to the window and looked out at Ghost Mountain. The fog was doing that thing again, forming shapes that looked almost human before dissolving. My years in Force Recon taught me to trust my gut, and right now my gut was screaming that this wasn't just bad weather. Sarah radioed in again, her voice shaking. Marcus, you need to see this. By the old oak at Marker 7, there's something wrong with the fog. It's taking shapes, and I swear I just heard my sister's voice calling me. My sister, who lives in Florida. I grabbed my emergency pack and headed out. The air felt wrong, heavy and cold, like breathing through a wet blanket. As I walked past the station's weather instruments, I noticed they were all going haywire. The temperature kept dropping and rising. The wind vane was spinning in circles, and the barometer was showing readings that were impossible for our elevation. That's when I heard it, a voice in the fog calling my name. It sounded exactly like my old Marine buddy Mike, the same Mike who died in my arms overseas. I froze, my hand instinctively touching the scar on my throat. The fog swirled closer, and in its depths, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A face. A human face formed from mist staring at me with eyes that reflected like mirrors. And then it smiled. I've spent 15 years in these mountains, dealt with everything from angry bears to lost, kids to the worst storms you can imagine, but nothing had ever felt as wrong as that smile in the fog. I knew right then that Ghost Mountain was about to show us exactly why the natives named it that. And I had a feeling those empty clothes we found were just the beginning. By morning, the fog hadn't lifted. If anything, it had gotten worse. I gathered my team in the ranger station. Sarah, who'd been with us for 2 years, Mike Roberts, our best tracker, Jenny Chen, our medical expert, and Tom Wilson, who knew these mountains better than anyone. Listen up, I said, spreading out the map on the table. We've got 3 families missing now. We're going to search in pairs, radio check every 15 minutes. If you see anything strange, and I mean anything, you call it in. I couldn't tell them about the face I'd seen in the fog yesterday. They'd think I was crazy, but I did notice Sarah's hands shaking as she checked her radio. Something wrong? I asked her quietly. That voice I heard yesterday, she whispered. It kept going all night, called my name right outside my window, but when I looked, nothing was there. Tom was checking his gear when he suddenly stopped. Anyone else feel that? He asked. We all stood still. The air had gotten colder and there was this weird pressure like right before a big storm. But this felt different. Wrong. Radios ready? I asked. Everyone nodded. Okay, let's move out. Sarah, you're with me. Tom and Jenny take the east trail. Mike, stick with... The radio on my belt crackled. Static at first, then voices. Lots of them. Some sounded like kids playing, others like people calling for help. But they were all mixed together like a crowd of people talking at once. That's not possible, Jenny said. Those frequencies are restricted. I grabbed my radio and tried to call base. Nothing but static. Our phones weren't working either. We headed out anyway. Sarah and I took the trail toward where the first family disappeared. The fog was so thick I could barely see 10 feet ahead. It curled around our legs as we walked, and sometimes it seemed to move in the wrong direction, like it was following us. Marcus, Sarah said suddenly, grabbing my arm. Look. Through the fog, about 30 feet ahead, someone was walking. The shape looked human, but something wasn't right. The way it moved was too smooth, like it was gliding instead of walking. Hello? I called out. This is Park Ranger Thompson. Are you lost? The figure stopped. Slowly, it turned around. My heart nearly stopped. It had no face, just smooth, foggy, skin where features should be. Then, like someone pushing through clay, a face started to form. Eyes, nose, mouth. Until I was looking at an exact copy of Sarah's face. Sarah screamed. The thing with her face smiled and stepped toward us. Where it walked, it left no footprints in the mud. Run! I grabbed Sarah's arm, and we ran back down the trail. The fog got thicker, trying to block our way. I could hear that thing behind us calling out in Sarah's voice, "Wait for me. Why are you running from yourself?" We made it back to a small clearing where we were supposed to meet the others. Tom and Jenny were already there, both as white as sheets. You saw them too? Tom asked, his voice shaking. The fog people. Before we could answer, Mike's voice came through on the radio. Clear as day, no static. Help, they've got me by the old oak tree. Hurry. We all looked at each other. Mike was supposed to be back at base. That's not Mike, I said. Everyone, stick together. We're heading back to... Help, please! This time it was Jenny's voice on the radio, but Jenny was standing right next to me. Then more voices started coming through. My voice, Sarah's voice, Tom's voice, all calling for help, all sounding perfectly real. The fog closed in around us, and in it, I could see them forming copies of ourselves, stepping out of the mist, all wearing our faces, all smiling those terrible smiles. Don't run, they said in our voices. We just want to show you something. That's when we heard the real scream. Mike, the real Mike, somewhere in the fog behind us. Then silence. We ran back toward his voice, but all we found was his ranger jacket on the ground, empty, still warm. And all around us, the fog was getting thicker, filled with whispers and faces and things that should not be. "Back to the station," I ordered. "Now!" As we ran, I counted heads. Sarah, Tom, Jenny, 4 of us. But somehow, when we looked back, there were 5 shadows following us through the fog, and the 5th one was wearing Mike's face. None of us slept that night. How could we? Mike was gone, and those things wearing our faces were still out there in the fog. We locked ourselves in the ranger station, but the fog kept creeping in through every tiny crack. Around midnight, 3 hikers stumbled in from the dark. They were shaking, their clothes soaked. "Something's following us," one of them said. "It looks like people made of mist." I gave them hot coffee while Sarah called for help, but just like before, the radios only played back our own voices, twisted and wrong. That's when Tom found the old box. "Look at this," he said, pulling out yellowed papers from a dusty file cabinet. Letters from 1932. A Native American chief wrote to the Park Service begging them not to build trails near Ghost Mountain. Jenny read over his shoulder. "It says the mountain is a gateway, that there are things that live in the mist, things that steal faces and voices to lure people in. They're called mist skinwalkers," said a voice behind us. We all jumped. It was Carl, an old Cherokee man who worked as our maintenance guy. I'd known him for years, but had never seen him look so serious. "My grandfather told me stories," Carl said quietly. "They're ancient spirits. They live between our world and theirs, in the mist. They take people to feed their fog, to make it stronger." "How do we stop them?" I asked. "You don't. A scream cut him off. One of the hikers was pointing at the window. Through the fog, we could see shapes moving, dozens of them, all wearing our faces. "The storage room," I said. "Now!" We rushed in, but one of the hikers wasn't fast enough. The fog poured through the door like water, wrapping around him. I grabbed his hand, but it went right through, like he was turning to mist himself. His scream faded away as he dissolved into the fog. The other 2 hikers panicked. They ran out the back door into the night. We heard their screams fade away too. "The ancient ones had a way," Carl said, his voice shaking. "A barrier, made from mountain ash and iron. But the circle must be complete." We spent the rest of the night building Carl's barrier, laying down iron chains and mountain ash in a circle around the station. The fog couldn't cross it, but it grew thicker and angrier outside our safe zone. Dawn brought no sun, just darker fog. And that's when we noticed something wrong with Tom. He was standing by the window, too still. When he turned around, his eyes, they reflected light like mirrors. "Tom?" Jenny stepped toward him. "Don't!" Carl grabbed her arm. "That's not Tom anymore." The thing wearing Tom's face smiled. That same terrible smile I'd seen in the fog. "But I am Tom," it said, its voice perfect, but somehow wrong. "I'm just better now. Join us. The fog shows you everything. All your memories, all your dreams." Sarah grabbed a flashlight and shined it at his face. The beam bounced off his eyes like they were made of glass. The real Tom, we realized, must have stepped outside the barrier when we weren't looking. Just for a second. That's all it took. "The fog is rising," fake Tom said. "Soon it'll cover the whole mountain, then the town. Then..." He smiled again, wider than any human mouth should stretch. I felt the Marine Corps medallion in my pocket grow ice cold. And suddenly I remembered something from my time overseas. Something about mirrors and evil spirits. "Jenny," I whispered, "get my bag. The one with my old military gear." While she did that, I kept fake Tom talking. Asked him about the fog, about what happened to the real Tom. Each answer made less sense than the last, like the thing was having trouble keeping its Tom mask on. Then I saw it. In the fog outside, faces pressed against the windows. Hundreds of them. Every person they'd ever taken, all staring in at us. And among them, the real Tom, his face twisted in a silent scream. Pulled out my medallion. The polished metal gleamed. You like mirrors? I asked fake Tom. Then look at this. I held up the medallion. The thing in Tom's shape screeched, a sound no human throat could make. Its face began to melt, showing what was really underneath. The iron, Carl shouted. The barrier. It's breaking. The fog was pouring through gaps in our defenses, and outside the faces were smiling, all of them, even Tom's. Sarah grabbed my arm. Marcus, look at Jenny. I turned. Jenny was by the window, her hand reaching out to touch the fog, and when she turned to us, her eyes were starting to shine like mirrors. Morning of day 4, and I couldn't trust anyone anymore. Jenny was gone. The fog took her right in front of us. Sarah was still here, and Carl too. But how could I be sure they were really themselves? Look at me, Sarah kept saying. Look at my eyes. See? They're normal. It's still me, Marcus. But I'd seen how fast they could change, how fast Tom had turned. The fog outside was doing something new now. When you looked into it, you saw memories. Your own memories playing like movies in the mist. Saw myself as a kid, opening Christmas presents. I saw my time in the Marines. I saw the day I got this scar on my throat. Don't look too long, Carl warned. That's how they trick you. They show you sweet memories, make you want to step into the fog to see more. 2 more rangers who'd come up the mountain to help us disappeared into the mist. We found their uniforms, empty like all the others. Sarah sat by the radio, trying to call for help. But now the voices coming through weren't just copies of us. They were our parents, our friends, people we loved, all begging us to come outside. Marcus? My mom's voice crackled through the radio. Honey, please help me. I'm lost in the fog. I almost ran out right then. But my mom lives in Florida. She's never even been to these mountains. They're learning, Carl said. Getting better at copying, at knowing what we want to hear. I pulled out my medallion again. The mirror surface showed our reflections, all normal. For now. But then Sarah noticed something in the old files Tom had found. Something about fire. Look, she said, pointing to a faded page. The Cherokee used to build bonfires around the mountain. Big ones. It says the light and heat pushed the fog back. The fog hates strong light, Carl added. That's why it waited until the cloudy season to rise. I checked my flashlight. The batteries were almost dead, and the fog had soaked through. Most of our spare ones. That's when the temperature dropped. Our breath came out in clouds that joined the fog, and the memories in the mist changed. Now they were showing us bad things, the worst moments of our lives. I saw Mike dying again, over and over. Sarah saw her dad's funeral. Carl saw something that made him cover his eyes and cry. Stop looking, I yelled, but it was hard. The memories pulled at you like hooks in your mind. The fog started seeping under the doors again. Our iron barrier was failing. The mountain ash was almost used up. Marcus, Sarah whispered, I found something else about your medallion. She showed me another page from the files. It talked about mirrors, about how the mist skinwalkers couldn't stand seeing their true forms reflected back at them. But my medallion's so small, I said. We'd need something bigger. Much bigger. That's when Carl's eyes lit up. Thank goodness, not like mirrors, just with an idea. The old fire tower, he said. The whole top is covered in windows. If we could get up there with some lights, it could make a giant mirror, Sarah finished. Reflect the fog back on itself. It was a crazy plan. The fire tower was a mile up the mountain, through the thickest fog, and we'd have to carry batteries for the lights. But what choice did we have? We packed what we could. Food, lights, batteries, my medallion, the last of the mountain ash. But as we got ready to leave, Sarah started acting strange, staring into the fog too long, talking about how pretty the memories were. Sarah, I grabbed her shoulder. Look at me, she turned. For a second I thought I saw her eyes flicker, like a mirror catching light. But then they were normal again. I'm fine, she said. Just tired. I wasn't sure if I believed her. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. The fog pressed against the windows, full of faces. Tom's face, Jenny's face, the faces of everyone we'd lost. All smiling those terrible smiles. We had to move fast. The fire tower was our last chance. But as we stepped outside our failing barrier, I couldn't help wondering, was Sarah really herself? Was Carl? Was I? The walk to the fire tower was the longest mile of my life. The fog was so thick now that we had to hold hands to stay together. Carl led the way, then Sarah, then me at the back with the heavy battery pack. Every few steps we'd hear voices calling from the mist. Sometimes they sounded like people we knew. Sometimes they were strange, whispering things that made no sense. The worst was when we heard ourselves calling for help. Halfway there, Carl stopped suddenly. "Look," he whispered. The trees. The fog had shaped itself into people, standing between the trees. Dozens of them, all wearing faces we knew. My heart nearly stopped when I saw my own face smiling back at me from the mist. "Don't look at them," I said. "Keep moving." But Sarah was staring at them, her eyes wide. "They're so beautiful," she whispered. Before I could stop her, she let go of Carl's hand and stepped toward the fog people. "Sarah, no!" I grabbed her arm and spun her around. Her eyes caught the light from my flashlight and reflected it back like mirrors. It wasn't Sarah anymore. Maybe it hadn't been Sarah for a while. The thing wearing Sarah's face smiled that terrible smile. "Too late," it said in her voice. "She's already part of the fog, just like Tom, just like Jenny, just like you'll be soon." I pulled out my medallion and held it up. The fake Sarah hissed and stepped back, her face starting to melt into mist. "Carl," I shouted, "run!" We ran through the woods, the battery pack slamming against my back. Behind us, I could hear them coming. Not just fake Sarah, but all of them. The fog people, the ones wearing our friends' faces. Their footsteps made no sound in the dead leaves. The fire tower looked like a ghost itself, rising up through the mist. As we climbed the metal stairs, the fog tried to follow us. It curled around our legs, trying to pull us back. "Almost there," Carl panted. "Just a few more steps." We reached the top platform. Windows lined every wall, dirty but still reflecting what little light there was. I hooked up the batteries to our lights while Carl barred the door. But we were too slow. The fog poured through. Every crack and seam. It formed into shapes. All the people it had taken, Tom, Jenny, Sarah, the missing hikers. They surrounded us, their mirror eyes gleaming. "Join us," they said, all speaking together. "The fog shows you everything. All memories, all dreams. No more pain, no more fear. Now, Marcus," Carl yelled. I flipped the switches. Bright lights blazed from every corner, reflecting off the windows. The fog people screamed, a sound like wind through broken glass. But something was wrong. Carl was standing too close to the window, and when he turned to me, his eyes were mirrors too. "You think I was still me?" he asked, smiling that terrible smile. "I changed days ago. We let you get this far because the fog wants you most of all. Your memories, your fear, your pain. The fog feeds on it." The fake Carl reached for me with hands that were turning to Behind him, all the fog people pressed closer, their faces melting together. I backed up against the windows, clutching my medallion. "My memories?" I said. "You want my memories?" I thought of my worst one. The day I got this scar, the explosion, the pain, the fear. The fog people leaned in closer, hungry for the memory. "Take it then," I growled, and thought about it as hard as I could. The heat, the blood, the screaming. The fog people jerked back. The memory was too hot, too bright, too painful for them. I grabbed the biggest light and held it up with my medallion. The reflection bounced between the windows, getting brighter and brighter. The fog people shrieked. Their faces began to dissolve. Even fake Carl's smile melted away as the light hit him. "You want my memories?" I shouted. "Here they are. Every painful one, every scary one, come and take them." The fog tried to pull back, but it was trapped in the tower. The reflected light got brighter and brighter until I had to close my eyes. The shrieking rose to a pitch that shattered the windows. Cold wind rushed in. And then, silence. When I opened my eyes, the fog was gone. The morning sun shone through the broken windows. Below the tower, I could see clear blue sky for the first time in days, but I was alone in the tower. Everyone the fog had taken was still gone. Sarah, Tom, Jenny, Carl, all those hikers. They were just gone. I clicked on my radio, and this time there was no static, no voices, just the clean sound of the emergency channel. "This is Ranger Thompson," I said. "We have a situation on Ghost Mountain." They moved me to a different park after what happened on Ghost Mountain. Somewhere flat and open with no mountains and hardly any fog. But it doesn't matter. The mist follows me now. I see it in the morning, curling under my front door. I see it in the bathroom mirror, forming faces behind my shoulder. They vanish when I turn around, but I know they're there. The official report said it was all a tragic accident. They blamed strange weather patterns and confusion in the fog for the disappearances. 27 people gone without a trace. No bodies ever found. Just empty clothes left scattered on the trails. Sarah's family still calls me sometimes, asking if I've remembered anything else about the day she vanished. I don't tell them about her mirror eyes or how she smiled at the end. I don't tell anyone about that anymore. They'd think I was crazy. I keep my Marine Corps medallion with me all the time now. Its mirror surface is the only thing that makes me feel safe. Sometimes, late at night, I catch glimpses in it of familiar faces in the mist. Tom, Jenny, Carl, Sarah. They don't smile anymore. They just watch. The fog on Ghost Mountain is still there, they say. Not as thick as before, but strange. Hikers report hearing voices in it, seeing shapes. The Park Service closed those trails, but people still go missing sometimes. Last week, I got a letter from the local Cherokee tribe. They're doing a ceremony on Ghost Mountain, something about closing a gateway. They asked me to come, saying I might be the only one who understands what really lives in the mist. I won't go. I can't. But sometimes I wonder about all those people trapped in the fog. Are they still aware? Do they remember who they were? Or are they just part of the mist now, floating between our world and somewhere else? The worst part is the dreams. Every night I see that final moment in the fire tower. But in my dreams I don't win. In my dreams I look into a broken window and see my own reflection. And my eyes are mirrors. I wake up from these dreams to find my bedroom full of fog. And in that moment between sleep and waking, I swear I can hear them whispering, "Come join us, Marcus, we've been waiting for you, the fog misses you." Sometimes in my weaker moments I almost want to. Just step into the mist and let go. Become part of their world of vapor and shadows. But I hold on to my medallion instead. I hold on tight and wait for morning, because I know the truth now. The fog never really leaves. It just waits. And somewhere in that mist, wearing borrowed faces and mirror eyes, they're still out there, still watching, still smiling, still waiting for me to join them in the fog. The woman's scream echoed through the forest and my blood turned to ice. It wasn't just any scream. It was Sarah's voice, my dead wife's voice. But Sarah had been gone for 2 years now, taken by cancer that spread faster than autumn wildfire. I'm Ranger Marcus Whitaker. Folks around here call me Red because of my hair, though these days it's more gray than red. After 20 years of patrolling Ozark National Forest, I thought I'd seen everything. I was wrong. It all started 3 weeks ago during an unusually warm November, the kind of warmth that makes the animals act strange. I was sitting in my ranger station filling out paperwork about missing hikers, 3 hunters who hadn't come, back from the north section. That's when old Joseph Running Bear came to see me. Joseph was respected among the Cherokee people, and I'd known him long enough to know he didn't spook easily. But that day, his dark eyes were filled with worry as he placed a small leather pouch on my desk. "The long night is coming, Red," he said, his weathered hands shaking slightly. "The wolves, they're acting wrong. And the moon. He glanced out my window at the blood-red harvest moon hanging low in the sky. She bleeds for what's about to happen. I touched the silver locket I always carried, Sarah's locket. It was my good luck charm, though luck hadn't done much for Sarah in the end. What exactly are we dealing with here, Joseph? He shook his head. Something old, something that walks like a man but isn't one. It calls to the wolves, makes them its own. The stories say it can steal voices, trick you with sounds of loved ones. He pushed the leather pouch closer. Sacred tobacco, you'll need it. I wanted to dismiss it as superstition, but 15 years in the army, including a tour in Korea, taught me that sometimes the craziest stories hold truth. Besides, 3 hunters were missing, and the local wolves were attacking livestock, something they rarely did. The next morning I found the first campsite. The tent was shredded like paper, sleeping bags torn to ribbons. But it was the tracks that made my skin crawl. They looked like wolf prints, but some were different. Massive paw prints that slowly changed into something that looked almost human. Around the campsite, half-eaten deer carcasses were arranged in a perfect circle, like some sick ritual. In the trees, strange symbols had been carved into the bark, fresh cuts that still oozed sap. That's when I heard it. Howls in the distance, but these weren't normal wolf howls. They sounded almost human. And as the blood-red sun set behind the Ozark Mountains, I saw them. A pack of wolves at the tree line, their eyes glowing red in the dying light. I reached for my radio to call, for backup. We needed more rangers out here. That's when Deputy Ranger Timothy Brooks' voice crackled through. Red, you need to see this. I found something. Oh God. His voice cut off in static, and in the distance a woman screamed. Sarah's scream, I knew she wasn't really there. I knew it was impossible. But as I gripped her silver locket and headed into the darkening forest, I realized I was about to learn just how many impossible things could exist in these ancient woods. The long night was indeed coming, and it was bringing something terrible with it. I clicked on my flashlight and headed into the woods, following Brooks's last known location. The beam cut through darkness like a knife, catching glimpses of tree bark and fallen leaves. Every snap of a twig under my boots made me pause and listen. 20 years as a ranger taught me one thing. The forest talks to you if you know how to listen. Tonight, it was dead quiet. No crickets, no owls, nothing. I found the first real clue, near an old oak tree. Fresh claw marks about 8 feet up the trunk. Too high for a normal wolf. My hand touched the cuts, the wood was still damp with sap. Whatever did this was here less than an hour ago. Brooks, I called out, keeping my voice low. No answer, just the wind moving through the trees. The trail led me to a small clearing and my stomach dropped. There, in the mud, I found what was left of the first missing hunter. The body was torn up pretty bad, but that wasn't the strangest part. Someone, or something, had arranged the remains, in a pattern like the points of a star. Around the body, dozens of wolf tracks formed a perfect circle. I'd seen wolf kills before. This wasn't one of them. Wolves don't arrange their prey. They don't draw patterns. My radio crackled to life, making me jump. Through the static, I heard Brooks breathing hard. Red. I'm at the old Miller Creek mine. Found someone. They're still alive. His voice was shaky. Hurry. I knew the mine. About half a mile north. I started running, my flashlight beam bouncing off trees. That's when I heard them. Wolves howling in the distance. But there was something wrong with the sound. It was like they were talking, almost forming words. The moon cast strange shadows through the branches. Every few steps, I'd catch movement in the corner of my eye. But when I turned, nothing was there. Just darkness between the trees. I was halfway to the mine when I heard Sarah's voice again, closer this time. Marcus, help me. It sounded so real, so much like her, that I almost turned toward it. But Sarah was gone. This thing, whatever it was using her voice like a lure. The mine entrance appeared ahead, a dark hole in the hillside. Brooks's flashlight moved inside, the beam shaking. Brooks, wait for backup, I shouted. Too late. A scream erupted from the mine, not Sarah's this time, but a man's voice I didn't recognize. I rushed in, gun drawn, flashlight searching the tunnel walls. I found Brooks kneeling next to someone, one of the missing hunters. The man was badly hurt but alive, his eyes wide with terror. The wolves, the hunter wheezed. They're not wolves. He controls them. The alpha who walks like a man. Save your strength, I said, pulling out my first aid kit. We'll get you out of here. No, the hunter grabbed my arm. You don't understand. It knows your voices, your memories. It's hunting us all. His grip loosened. We lost him right there in that mine shaft. Brooks sat against the wall, shaking. Red, did you see its eyes? When it looked at us from the darkness? What are you talking about? There's nothing here but us. Red. Brooks pointed his flashlight. Beam behind me. Then what's that? I turned slowly. There, at the edge of the light, were dozens of glowing red eyes. Wolf eyes. And behind them, standing upright in the shadows, was something much bigger. Something that shouldn't exist. The wolves started moving forward, and that's when I noticed something else. They were walking in perfect formation, like soldiers. No wild wolves do that. Run. I grabbed Brooks's arm and pulled him toward the exit. Behind us, the wolves started howling, but this time, I clearly heard words in their cries. They were calling our names. We burst out of the mine into the moonlight. The wolves didn't follow, but their howls echoed through the forest. They weren't just hunting us anymore, they were playing with us. I looked at Brooks. His face was pale, his hands still shaking. We need backup, I said. And I need to talk to Joseph Running Bear again. He knows more than he's telling us. Red. Brooks's voice was barely a whisper. What if we can't stop it? I touched Sarah's locket. Everything can be stopped, Tim. We just need to figure out how. But as we walked back to the ranger station, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Whatever this thing was, this creature that could control wolves and steal voices, it was just getting started, and the night was still young. The next morning, Dr. Elizabeth Morrison from the Forest Service arrived at my station. As our wildlife vet, she'd been tracking the strange wolf behavior for weeks. The wolves are acting like a single mind, she said, spreading photos across my desk. They showed wolves walking in straight lines, moving together like they were marching. It's not natural, and look at this. She pointed to a close-up of wolf eyes. They were glowing bright red like hot coals. Could be just the camera flash, I said, not believing it myself. Elizabeth shook her head. I saw them with my own eyes, Red. And there's more. She pulled out a map marked with red X's. Every attack happens in a pattern, like something's drawing a shape across the forest. Brooks walked in, looking like he hadn't slept. Dark circles under his eyes, hands shaky as he poured coffee. Tim? I asked. You okay? I keep hearing things, he whispered. Voices calling me into the woods. My mom's voice. But she died when I was 12. Elizabeth looked worried. We should get you to a doctor. No, Brooks snapped, then calmed down. No, I need to help finish this. A knock at the door made us all jump. It was Joseph Running Bear, looking even more worried than yesterday. The burial ground, he said without greeting. The old Cherokee burial ground in the North Woods. Something's disturbed it. How do you know? I asked. The signs are clear. Birds flying the wrong way. Plants dying in patterns. And the voices. He looked at Brooks. You hear them too, don't you, young man? Brooks nodded slowly. We need to go there, Joseph said. Now, before dark. We took 2 ranger trucks up the old logging road. Elizabeth came with us, wanting to document everything. The sun was already low in the sky when we reached the burial ground. What we found made my skin crawl. The ancient stone markers had been moved, arranged in a circle. Deep claw marks scored the rocks. In the center lay a fresh deer carcass, its bones carefully arranged to spell something. Elizabeth took pictures while Joseph walked the circle, touching each stone and muttering prayers. Look at this, Elizabeth called. She pointed to tracks in the mud, wolf prints that slowly changed into human footprints, just like at the campsite. That's when we heard Sarah's voice again. "Marcus, please help me." It came from the darkening woods. Brooks started walking toward it like he was in a trance. "Tim, stop." I grabbed his arm. "It's not real." "But I hear my mother, too," he said, his eyes glazed. "She's calling me." Joseph grabbed Brooks' other arm. "The creature feeds on grief, on loss. It uses our pain against us." A howl cut through the air, closer than any we'd heard before. Then, another and another. Red eyes appeared between the trees surrounding us. "The trucks," I said. Now, we ran. The wolves burst from the woods, at least 20 of them, moving together like they shared one mind. But they weren't attacking. They were hurting us, driving us away from the trucks and deeper into the forest. Elizabeth stumbled. I helped her up, but not before seeing what made her fall. Another body, the second missing hunter. Unlike the first one, this hunter was still breathing. "Help me." Blood bubbled from his mouth as he spoke. "Don't move," Elizabeth said, pulling out her medical kit. "We'll get you out of here." "No time," the hunter wheezed. "It's coming. The alpha, 9 feet tall, walks like a man but isn't, controls the pack with its mind." Joseph knelt beside him, pressing the leather pouch of sacred tobacco into the man's hand. "Tell us how to stop it." The hunter's eyes went wide. "Behind you." We turned. There in the growing darkness stood something I'll never forget. It looked like a wolf standing on 2 legs, but wrong. Too tall, too human-like. Its red eyes glowed like fires, and when it opened its mouth I heard Sarah's voice come out. "Marcus, why did you let me die alone?" Brooks screamed. The wolf thing raised its head and howled, a sound that was half wolf, half human. The pack answered, their howls forming words I could almost understand. "Run!" Joseph shoved us forward. "I'll hold them back." Joseph, "No." But he was already pulling out more tobacco, throwing it in a circle and chanting in Cherokee. The wolves stopped at the circle's edge, snarling. We ran through the darkness, the dying hunter's words echoing in my head. Behind us, Joseph's chanting turned into a scream. When we finally reached the trucks, Brooks was shaking so bad he could barely stand. Elizabeth helped him into the passenger seat while I started the engine. "What about Joseph?" Elizabeth asked. I looked back at the dark woods. No more screams, no more howls, just silence. "He knew what he was doing," I said, touching Sarah's locket. "And now we know what we're dealing with." "Do we?" Brooks whispered. "Do we really?" I started driving back to the station, but I knew this wasn't over. The creature had Joseph now. It had our voices, our memories, our pain, and night was falling. Again. Back at the ranger station, Elizabeth spread out her research across the big table. Rain pounded against the windows and thunder rolled across the sky. "Look at this," she said, pointing to her laptop screen. "I've been tracking wolf movements for months. They're not random." She showed us a map with lines connecting all the wolf sightings. Together, they made a huge star shape across the forest. Brooks sat in the corner, jumping at every thunder crack. He hadn't spoken since we got back, just kept staring out the window and touching the cross necklace his mother gave him before she died. "Tim," I said softly, "maybe you should go home, get some rest." He shook his head. "Can't sleep, the voices, they're getting louder." He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "They're not just in my head anymore, Red. They're in my dreams." Elizabeth walked over and checked his temperature. "You're burning up. At least let me give you something to help you sleep." "No!" Brooks jumped up. "No, I need to stay awake. It's worse when I sleep. I see things." "What things?" I asked. "The burial ground, but older. Before the stones. I see the creature. There, sleeping under the earth for hundreds of years. People making sacrifices to keep it asleep." He grabbed my arm. "Red, I think we woke it up. The new logging road they built last summer. It went right through its territory. Lightning flashed and the power went out. We were in darkness for a few seconds before the emergency lights kicked in. casting everything in a dim red glow. Elizabeth's laptop showed a new weather map. "This storm isn't natural," she said. "It's centered right over us, not moving." That's when we heard the first howl, close, right outside the station. I moved to the window. In the rain, I could see them. Wolves. Dozens of them surrounding the building. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness. They were sitting in a perfect circle around the station like they were waiting for something. "The guns," I said. "In the cabinet." But before we could move, a voice called from outside. Joseph's voice. "Red, let me in." I escaped. "Please." Brooks started walking toward the door. "Tim, no," I grabbed him. "That's not Joseph. We saw what happened to him." "But I hear my mother too," he said dreamily. "She's out there with him." Elizabeth helped me pull Brooks away from the door. That's when the whole building shook. Something huge had landed on the roof. Thump, thump, thump. Footsteps above us. The ceiling creaked. "The back door," I whispered. Quiet. We crept through. The dark station. The emergency lights flickered with each thunderclap. The footsteps followed us overhead. Elizabeth stopped suddenly. "Look." Through the window, we could see it. The creature was climbing down the wall outside like a spider, its huge claws leaving deep marks in the wood. In the red emergency lights, I could finally see it clearly. It was like a wolf, but wrong in every way. 9 feet tall, standing on 2 legs. Its fur was matted with mud and blood. But its face was the worst part. It kept shifting like it couldn't decide what to be. One moment it looked like a wolf, the next almost human, then something in between. The creature raised its head and spoke with Sarah's voice. "Marcus, why are you running from me?" Then with Joseph's voice. "Let us in, Red." Then with a child's voice, probably Brooks' mother. "Timmy, come to Mama," Brooks screamed. The windows exploded inward as wolves crashed through them. We ran for the back door, but more wolves were there, blocking our escape. "The basement," Elizabeth shouted. "The heavy door." We sprinted for the basement. Stairs. I could hear claws clicking on the floor behind us. The wolves weren't running at full speed. They were hurting us again, driving us down. We made it through the basement door and slammed it shut. The heavy metal would hold them. I hoped. Elizabeth turned on her flashlight. The basement was full of old equipment and files. "There has to be another way out," she said. Brooks slid down the wall, holding his head. "They're in my mind, all the voices, screaming." Claws scraped against the metal door. Something much bigger slammed into it, making it bend inward. "There." Elizabeth pointed to an old tunnel entrance. "The maintenance tunnels. They lead to the other buildings." Another slam. The door's hinges were starting to give. "Tim," I helped Brooks up. "Stay with us. Don't listen to the voices." He looked at me, and for a moment his eyes glowed red in the flashlight beam. But red. They're so beautiful. The door burst open. The creature ducked its massive head to enter the basement. Behind it, red eyes glowed in the darkness as the pack followed their master. Elizabeth grabbed my arm. "Run!" We sprinted into the tunnel. Behind us, Brooks started laughing, a horrible sound that mixed with the creature's howl. "Tim!" I turned back, but Elizabeth pulled me forward. "It's too late," she said. "We can't help him now." The tunnel echoed with howls, screams, and Brooks' laughter. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, I heard Sarah's voice calling my name. "BB." Hunt wasn't just intensifying. It was coming to a head. Elizabeth and I ran through the dark tunnel, our flashlight beams bouncing off wet walls. Water dripped somewhere ahead of us. Behind us, Brooks' laughter echoed, mixing with wolf howls. "We need to find a way back to the surface," Elizabeth whispered. "These tunnels connect all the park buildings, but I don't know the layout." I pulled out my ranger map. "There should be an exit near the old visitor center, about half a mile ahead." A howl echoed through the tunnel, closer now. But it wasn't just a howl anymore. It was Brooks' voice, twisted into something horrible. "Red, Elizabeth, don't you want to join the pack? It's so peaceful here. No more pain, no more loss." "Don't listen," I said, grabbing Elizabeth's arm as she stopped to look back. "That's not Brooks anymore." We found a junction where 3 tunnels met. The walls here were older, made of rough stone instead of concrete. Elizabeth's flashlight caught something on the wall. Old paintings. "These are Cherokee symbols," she said, studying them. "Like the ones we saw at the burial ground. They're warnings." The voice made us both jump. Joseph Running Bear stepped out of the shadows, leaning against the wall. He was hurt bad, bleeding from deep cuts across his chest. "Joseph," I moved to help him. "We thought you were dead?" "Not yet." He coughed. "But there isn't much time. The creature, I know what 'tis now, what it wants." Elizabeth helped him sit down. "What is it?" "An ancient spirit, a hunter. The Cherokee people used to make sacrifices to keep it sleeping in the burial ground, but now it's awake and it's hungry." He pulled something from his pocket, an old leather book. "My grandfather's journal, it tells how to stop it." Howls echoed through the tunnels again. "Closer." "The locket," Joseph said, pointing at Sarah's silver necklace. "Pure silver, made with love. And..." He started coughing again, harder. "Joseph, save your strength. We'll get you out of here." He shook his head. "No time. The ritual in the book. Use the silver, but it has to be at the burial ground and..." His eyes went wide, looking past us. "Run!" We turned. There was Brooks, or what used to be Brooks. His eyes glowed red like the wolves, and his movements were wrong, jerky like a puppet on strings. "Found you," he said, but his voice wasn't human anymore. It was mixed with wolf sounds. Behind him, red eyes glowed in the darkness as the pack crept forward. "Go!" Joseph stood up, pulling out his last pouch of sacred tobacco. "I'll hold them back one more time." "Joseph, no. The book. Use the book." He threw his last tobacco in a circle around himself and started chanting. The wolves stopped at the circle's edge, snarling. Brooks tilted his head, watching Joseph with those glowing eyes. We ran. Behind us, Joseph's chanting grew louder, and then we heard the creature's roar shake the tunnel. There was a scream, cut short. "He sacrificed himself," Elizabeth said as ran to give us a chance. We found stairs leading up and burst out into the rain near the old visitor center. The storm was worse now, lightning filling the sky every few seconds. Elizabeth opened Joseph's book with shaking hands. "The ritual. It needs to be done at the burial ground. We need silver and..." She looked up at me, face pale. "Blood. Willingly. Given..." A howl split the night, the closest one yet. We looked back at the tunnel entrance. Brooks stepped out, moving like a broken doll. Behind him came the creature, 9 feet of horror, blood dripping from its jaws. The wolf pack followed, red eyes glowing. "Your pain is so beautiful," the creature said, using Sarah's voice again. "Your grief, your loss, give it to me." "The burial ground," I said to Elizabeth. "We have to reach the burial ground. It's over a mile away." I touched Sarah's locket. "Then we better run fast." Brooks laughed that twisted laugh again. "Yes, run. The hunt is so much sweeter when you run." Lightning flashed as we sprinted into the dark forest. Behind us, the creature howled, a sound of pure hunger. "The whole pack answered, and the chase began. We ran through the rain-soaked woods, branches whipping our faces. The wolves weren't trying to catch us yet. They were herding us, driving us toward something. Elizabeth clutched Joseph's book to her chest as we ran. "Red!" she gasped. "If we don't make it..." "We'll make it," I said. But I wasn't sure anymore. The voices were getting to me too. Sarah calling, Joseph begging for help, Brooks laughing that horrible laugh. The creature was playing with us now, letting us run, wearing us down. It had all night. But we had Joseph's book, Sarah's locket, and one last chance to end this. If we could just reach the burial ground in time. The rain made it hard to see where we were going. Lightning flashed every few seconds, showing glimpses of trees and shadows. Elizabeth and I ran as fast as we could, splashing through puddles and mud. "Wait," Elizabeth grabbed my arm, pulling me to a stop. "Look!" Lightning lit up the forest again. We were at the edge of a clearing, the old mining area. Ahead of us, Rusty equipment lay scattered around the entrance to the main shaft. "The burial ground is on the other side," I said, catching my breath. "If we cut through the mine..." A howl echoed behind us, too close. Red eyes appeared between the trees. The pack had caught up. Inside. I pulled Elizabeth toward the mine. "Entrance. They'll have to come in single file. Gives us a chance." We ran into the darkness of the mine shaft. Our flashlight beams showed old support beams and mining cart tracks leading deeper underground. Water dripped from the ceiling, and the air smelled like wet earth and rust. "Red," Brooke's twisted voice echoed from the entrance. "Are we playing hide and seek?" Elizabeth's hands shook as she opened Joseph's book. "There's another way out up ahead. It comes out near the burial ground." We moved deeper into the mine, trying to stay quiet. Our footsteps echoed on the metal. Tracks. Every few steps we heard claws clicking on stone behind us. The tunnel split into two paths. "Which way?" I whispered. Elizabeth shined her light on both tunnels. "The right one should..." A scream cut her off. Sarah's scream coming from the left tunnel. Even knowing it wasn't real, my heart stopped for a second. "The right tunnel," Elizabeth said firmly, grabbing my arm. "Don't listen to it." We took the right path. The tunnel sloped upward, which was good. It meant we were heading toward the surface, but the going was slower now. The floor was slippery, with mud and water. Behind us, we heard Brooks laughing. The sound bounced off the walls, making it seem like it was coming from everywhere. "I can smell your fear," he said in that horrible mixed voice. "The master loves the taste of fear." Elizabeth stumbled. I caught her before she fell, but her flashlight dropped and shattered. "Keep moving," I said, pointing my light ahead. "We're almost..." The beam caught something that made my blood freeze. The tunnel ahead was blocked by a cave-in. "No." Elizabeth ran to the fallen rocks, pushing at them. "This can't be right. The map showed this way was clear." "It's hurting us," I realized. "It's been hurting us this whole time. Back to..." "The left tunnel," Elizabeth whispered, where we heard Sarah's voice. Red eyes appeared in the darkness behind us. The pack had caught up. They moved forward slowly, forcing us back toward the cave-in. Then came the sound of heavy footsteps. The creature appeared, ducking its massive head under the tunnel ceiling. In the flashlight beam, I saw its face shift and change. Now a wolf, now almost human, now something in between. "No more running," it said, using Sarah's voice. Then Brooks's voice. "Time to join the pack." I stepped in front of Elizabeth, holding up my flashlight like a weapon. The beam caught something behind the creature. Old support beams, half rotted with age. "Elizabeth," I whispered, "when I say run, head for the left tunnel." "What?" "But trust me." The creature moved closer. The wolves crept forward with it, red eyes glowing. "Your pain calls to me," it said in Sarah's voice. "Your grief, your loss." "Give it to me." I kept my light on its face, making it blink. "You want my pain?" I touched Sarah's locket. "Come and get it." The creature lunged. At the same moment, I threw my flashlight hard at the old support beam. The beam cracked. For a second, nothing happened. Then the ceiling groaned. "Run!" Elizabeth and I sprinted past the creature as rocks started falling. The creature roared, a sound of fury that shook the whole tunnel. The wolves scattered as the ceiling came down. We ran through the darkness, following the left tunnel by feel. Behind us, the cave-in rumbled and crashed. The creature's roar was cut off by falling rock. Finally, we saw light ahead, the exit. We burst out into the rain again. Did we kill it?" Elizabeth gasped. A howl answered her question. Distant, but full of rage, the creature had survived. "Where are we?" I asked, looking around. Lightning flashed, lighting up the clearing ahead of us. There, arranged in their perfect circle, stood the ancient stones of the burial ground. "Exactly where it wanted us," Elizabeth said quietly. The final battle was about to begin. Elizabeth and I stumbled into the burial ground circle. The rain had turned to a cold mist, and lightning still flashed across the sky. The ancient stones seemed to glow with a faint blue light. "Quick!" Elizabeth opened Joseph's book, pages wet with rain. The ritual. We need to form a circle with silver and... She looked up at me. Blood freely given. I touched Sarah's locket. Tell me what to do. A howl split the night. Closer now. Red eyes appeared in the forest around us. The pack was coming. The locket, Elizabeth said. Place it in the center of the circle. Then we need to... Hello, Red. We turned. Brooks stood at the edge of the stone circle. But it wasn't really Brooks anymore. His eyes glowed red, and when he moved, it was like a puppet being pulled by strings. Tim, I said softly. I know you're still in there somewhere. He laughed, that horrible mix of human and wolf sounds. Tim is gone. The master showed him peace, no more pain, no more memories of his dead mother. He tilted his head. Don't you want that too, Red? No more memories of Sarah dying? Don't. Listen, Elizabeth whispered, grabbing my arm. We need to complete the ritual. The ground shook. Something huge was coming through the forest. Trees cracked and fell. Too late, Brooks smiled. The master is here. The creature burst into the clearing. 9 feet of nightmare, its fur matted with blood and mud. Its face kept changing, shifting between wolf and human and something worse. The pack followed, surrounding the stone circle. So much pain, the creature said, using Sarah's voice. So much sweet grief. Then Joseph's voice. Did you think the old magics could stop me? Then Brooks's mother's voice. Join us, become part of the pack. I stepped forward, holding Sarah's locket. You want pain? You want grief? Come and get it. Elizabeth grabbed my arm. Red, no, the ritual. Read it, I said quietly. Be ready, I'll keep it busy. The creature laughed, a sound like breaking bones. Brave little ranger, your wife screamed too at the end. Shall we hear it again? Rage filled me, hot and clean and focusing. You're not going to use her voice again. I charged forward, swinging a punch at its wolf-like face. The creature was surprised enough that I actually hit it. Like punching. Brick wall. But it stepped back, snarling. Red! Elizabeth's voice rang out. The locket, in the center! I ducked under the creature's claws and rolled, pulling off Sarah's locket. I threw it into the middle of the stone circle. The creature roared and lunged at me. Its claws caught my shoulder, sending hot pain through my arm. I fell back, bleeding. Now! Elizabeth shouted. She was reading from Joseph's book, her voice strong and clear. Blood freely given, silver forged in love. The creature turned toward her, but I grabbed its leg. Not this time, I growled. My blood dripped onto the ground, running toward the locket. The stones began to glow brighter. No! The creature tried to move but couldn't. The ground under its feet was shining with blue light. Brooks screamed, a human scream this time. He fell to his knees, the red light leaving his eyes. The wolves whimpered and backed away. Elizabeth's voice grew louder, reading the Cherokee words. The locket began to glow with silver fire. You cannot, the creature roared, but its voice was its own now, deep and ancient and full of fear. I'm eternal. You are done, I said, standing up. Sarah's love was real. Your voices are just echoes. The silver fire from the locket shot up like lightning, surrounding the creature. It howled, a sound of pure rage and pain that shook the trees. Its body began to break apart, dissolving into shadow and mist. The wolves ran, their eyes no longer glowing red. Normal wolves again. Brooks gasped like he was coming up from underwater. Red? What happened? The creature gave one final scream, and then it was gone. The silver fire faded. The stones stopped glowing. Rain fell softly on the quiet forest. Elizabeth helped me up, looking at my shoulder. You're hurt. I'll live. I picked up Sarah's locket, warm but unharmed. How's Tim? Brooks was sitting up, looking confused but human again. I remember. Darkness, voices, but they're gone now. It's over, Elizabeth said softly. But I looked at the ancient stones, standing silent in their circle. At the forest, where normal, wolf howls echoed in the distance. At Sarah's locket, still warm with power. Maybe, I said. But there are other old things in these woods, other voices in the dark. I put the locket back around my neck. We walked out of the burial ground together, leaving the ancient stones to their secrets. The sun was rising. A new day was beginning, but I would never forget the long night when the hunter came. The night I learned that love was stronger than grief, and that some voices may be echoes, but they can still guide us home. And 1 year later, I'm still a ranger at Ozark National Forest. My shoulder healed, but I have 3 long scars that remind me of that night. I still wear Sarah's locket. It feels warmer now, somehow more alive. Elizabeth went back to studying wolves, but she's different too. She keeps Joseph's book safe, studying its warnings about other ancient things that sleep in these woods. Sometimes she calls me late at night when the wolves howl in strange ways. Brooks quit the ranger service. Can't blame him. He moved to the city, but he visits sometimes. We don't talk about what happened, but he leaves tobacco at the burial ground, a gift to honor Joseph's sacrifice. The Cherokee people set up new protections around the burial ground. Every full moon, they perform ceremonies to keep the old spirits sleeping. I join them sometimes, watching the smoke rise into the night sky. The wolves are normal again, hunting deer like they should. But during storms, when the moon turns red, and the wind carries strange voices, I check that Sarah's locket is around my neck, just in case. Because deep in the Ozark woods, where ancient stones stand in circles and old spirits sleep, sometimes the echoes of the hunt still whisper, and sometimes they answer when you call.